Travolting presents Bobbin for Robin. Hosted by Jeff Sweeney and Stuart Elmore. Covering Hook with special guest Rebecca Johnson. Hi.
Hi. I think you had something planned. Okay, you do have something planned. All right.
Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, 1991, one of Spielberg's best movies.
I feel like we're going to get a whole spectrum of opinions.
Are you guys ready to talk about Steven Spielberg's worst movie?
Oh, no.
Are you ready to talk about what I would qualify as a disaster?
Okay, I want to say immediately, I was fully 100% on I'm defending Hook to my dying day. Now I think I'm going to be a middleman here.
Oh, no.
I hate,
no.
I know. Sorry.
Oh, no. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to
back to the
for
podcast
Robin.
where we watch every Robin Williams movie.
Bobbin for Robin. Thank you for listening to our episode last week on The Fisher King. Another really good.
That movie's great.
That movie is amazing. Rejoined by William Angelico that we had as a special guest. And we're back. Literally barely even a year later, which that carries into the right away, jumping into the context corner. Robin Williams is busy.
Yes, he's cooking.
90
Booked
through
and
92, he is booked. He was doing days on Hook at the studio lots of Culver City, California. And then at Rap, he would go do rehearsals for Aladdin. Like, that's how busy this guy is.
Yeah.
He's already been booked for Aladdin when he's in production for Hook. He gets the Hook job right after the last day of The Fisher King. He's also doing Ferngully, The Last Rainforest, and he's got Toys. Like, he is cooking with gas.
It's the period right after his second Oscar nomination.
Yeah,
Dead Poets Society.
Yeah.
Where he is the guy in Hollywood.
Yes.
It's like him, he's the person.
And he's
the actor.
He's a good actor and a good movie star. He can sell you a movie, just have it. He's gotten to that degree where it's like putting Robin Williams on the name
above
of your
the
movie
title.
is above the title, and it will generate a certain dollar amount for your movie.
Yeah.
So directors love him, actors love him, studios love him.
1 out of 4 doctors hates him.
1 out of 4 doctors hates him. And Jeff, I think one thing to mention is the very top of the podcast we were talking about why we wanted to cover Robin. We talked about his huge filmography and the experience that he has worked with every pretty much so many great directors.
Yes.
And this being his first of two
direct collaborations with Spielberg. If you want to cast a wider net, there's a lot more
yeah, exactly.
To Wong Fu is kind of a Spielberg collaboration in a sense.
Yeah.
Spielberg always has his hands in something.
It's the second Spielberg wins his Oscar for Schindler's List, he takes 3 years off. We'll talk about Spielberg in a little bit, but he takes 3 years off. He comes back, he runs DreamWorks. He makes he produces 7 billion movies. And Robin's very involved in that area.
Yeah.
And then he finally pops back up again in AI, which is a very interesting second Spielberg for him to do because it's kind of a refutation of the ideas of Hook.
Right.
Which is very fascinating.
It is very fascinating. It's been a hot minute since I've seen AI, so it's
AI
not
is
fresh.
maybe his best movie. It's really
Spielberg's
good.
best movie?
It's up there.
It's
the saddest movie ever made. Get ready to ruin your fucking week when we cover AI.
Well, the thing that I've heard a lot about
you do. Yeah.
AI is that if you go into it watching it thinking this was originally going to be a Kubrick movie,
Dude.
that is now a Spielberg movie who's making it for his late friend Kubrick. Yeah. That gives it a whole new feeling when you watch it versus I think when my very first viewing of it, I didn't know who Stanley Kubrick was.
Yeah.
Didn't know who Steven Spielberg was. I watched this when I was kind of young, probably too young to watch this movie, really. And I just remember, like you said, just feeling very sad, very depressed, and not really walking away with it with too much. That being said, like I have rewatched it. It's still been a hot minute, but I have gathered new things. But you bring up a good point, Jeff, because AI, also a movie that came out, gets not really talked very well about right off the gate, but generates a cult following. Hook, on the other hand, is also a movie that gets critically panned. To this day, it still has a 29% Rotten Tomatoes score, critic score.
Really?
While it has a 76%, they call it the popcorn meter. I hate
The popcorn meter.
that
I don't like
name.
that. Yeah, that's
but
great.
it's like the audience score.
The
rating.
audience
It's the
review.
IMDb rating for Rotten Tomatoes. And in IMDb rating for Hook.
Can I guess?
Yeah, sure. Throw out a guess. 282,000 ratings, by the way.
Shit. I'm going to say 7.1.
You're close. 6.8. 6.8.
I was going to say lower than 7, but I didn't want to say it.
What I really like looking at for IMDb, though, is they have this really great graphic you can pull up, and it's like it distributes
Oh, yeah.
the way people will rate this, where a lot of people rate it 7.
Yeah.
Then it's
Oh, the
like
averages
good,
start.
good folks are 6. Then a huge drop down to 5. There's a decent amount of folks that do 8. Not a lot of people do 9. And then there's
Yeah.
like a slight uptick
Yeah.
for 10. And that slight uptick for 10 is what we're going to call this episode.
Yeah.
The slight uptick to 10. Look, the long lost Steven Spielberg masterpiece.
Who in this world has lost their whimsy? Everybody under 5
I'll
has.
tell you someone who lost their whimsy after this movie. Steven Spielberg.
No. Maybe Julia Roberts for a few years,
Oh,
but
no.
Tinkerhell, as they called her on set,
Okay,
which
so-
is really tough.
well,
It's
do
so
you know the
funny.
story about that?
yes.
Do we get into it now?
There's a lot, folks.
Let's do the Robin context
let's do the
first.
Yeah.
Then we'll do the
I'll
Spielberg
just say this.
context,
I'll
and
say
then we'll
this
get
right
into
off
the
the
fucking
cuff
movie.
that Hook, whether you love it or whether you hate it, is a big movie.
Yes, no, it's very important for this podcast.
And it's very important for a lot of people in one way or another.
And that's
Either-
why we brought Becca back for the first
Yes.
time in a year and a half. Since Hook,
Exactly.
we haven't introduced yet.
who we haven't introduced yet. Sorry. Yes,
Oh,
Becca,
oh, no.
everybody.
It's me.
Whoa.
Literally, this soundboard didn't exist the last time I was on this podcast.
And now it's causing car wrecks. So Robin, as I sort of alluded to earlier, Robin is at a very high period for him. Hook is sort of his first movie where he's rejoined back into the Hollywood, California fray. Because prior to that, as we mentioned, he'd been living in New York since the time of around Moscow on the Hudson and around Good Morning Vietnam. That period up until The Fisher King being his like last sort of, it'd be incorrect to call it like the New York indie scene because he's not really in indie movies, but more of like his character centric,
Smaller
concept.
mid-budget films.
Yeah. Now when The Fisher King ended, him and his second wife Marcia, with Zach and Zelda, they moved back to San Francisco, California, where they're going to live for a long time. And Robin has sort of folded back into the OG Hollywood, tribe. And very fitting that his first movie would be with
the King of Hollywood.
with the king of Hollywood at this point in time, Steven Spielberg, who the two did have a relationship before this movie, but this movie kind of seals their friendship in stone for a while. And Robin and Spielberg will have, like I said, on paper, it's just two collaborations, but like you said,
they
Jeff,
become genuine friends.
they become genuine friends. And if you cast like kind of a wider, broader net, like they do kind of check in on each other's lives so often. There's like the classic story where Spielberg would bring Robin Williams onto set of Schindler's List to tell some jokes.
Oh, wow.
To keep
Yeah, I have
people,
heard that.
Yeah, to keep people. It was a very sad, depressing set to be on, and so he would call Robin Williams at the end of the day when he'd get home just to kind of get a laugh in.
That's crazy. I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah, and so the two share a very strong connection.
We'll talk about it later in a few, like 2 or 3 months when we cover To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything.
Yeah.
But that's a movie where Spielberg like is in his, producing empire in Amblin, and he gets the script and he just hands it to Robin Williams, who does a complete cold read of the entire script.
Yeah.
For Steven Spielberg, doing all the voices of the characters.
We know why he did that, right? Because Steven Spielberg is afraid of flying. Mm-hmm. Like Peter Pan is in this movie.
Steven Spielberg also weirdly, this is he does 3 movies prior to this all about airplanes. Just like he kind of does like a run of airplane movies. Yeah. Always a movie about a pilot, Empire of the Sun, a movie about a kid who loves airplanes.
Yeah.
I mean, Last Crusade isn't about airplanes, but does have a big airplane fight in the middle of it.
And so Robin, I mean, not much more I can say to that other than he is sort of the Prince of Hollywood at this point. And now that he's back into the Hollywood fray, like he's starting off with a big budget, like I would call this like a blockbuster. This is kind of blockbuster-esque.
I mean, it's Spielberg, so.
It's Spielberg, yeah. And soon after, he's going to be in, a lot of the movies that people really know Robin for. I mean, obviously Hook being one of them, but then Aladdin, Toys, Mrs. Doubtfire, Jumanji, all of those like big scale projects that he's going to be a part of. Which, I think
he's entering into like a Hollywood actor period.
Yeah, which I think like not to go too far away from this, but one could make the case, like I'm not arguing that like his trajectory from Hook onwards, like there is a little bit of like one could argue like a misstep because but prior to this, as we said, was doing a lot of low concept character focused films like The Fisher King or like Moscow and the Hudson or Dead Poet Society, Good Morning Vietnam. And then he's in a lot of these big blockbuster movies. And while I say this now, he's going to win an Oscar for, I would say, probably one of his like most low concept movies that he's probably ever been in, Good Will Hunting.
I'm just going to do a movie for those 2 Boston boys.
Yeah, for those 2 Boston boys.
Yeah, you like them apples, huh?
But everything like prior to that and after Hook, like that period in between, like being this like big budget, it's also where he kind of gets more cornered into like that family genre, man. And it does sort of put Robin in a bit of a box. None of that's super relevant now. What's relevant now is that if you can get Robin Williams on your movie, it's a blessing. Yeah. And it will get you money.
Yeah.
And so this movie goes into production actually a while prior to 91. This was
like a long-term development.
This was a development hell project that started in the 80s. Steven Spielberg was attached, as well as Dustin Hoffman. And
in like 84.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, in 84.
And then Spielberg left.
Spielberg left because he had just had his 3rd or 4th child.
Yeah, he'd had his next kid, and he decided instead of a Peter Pan story to make Empire of the Sun.
Right, but he was also like, if I make Peter Pan, I'm going to be away from home for like ever. And he wanted to kind of stay at home and be a dad, which would be the opposite choice that Peter Pan would have made in the movie Hook. And so I'm going to make a lot of those things because Spielberg and Robin both say that like making Hook, this is a movie, and this is where we get to the Stuart aspect of it, is that this is a movie made by dads, for dads, about dads. This is a father movie. And one of the things that's always been interesting about my thought about like the title Hook, like why is the movie called Hook? It's a Peter Pan movie and Hook is the antagonist. Why are you making this like, why is the title the antagonist?
Yeah.
But it makes sense when you think about like the ultimate conflict going on here is Hook and Pan competing to be better fathers. And I think that is something that Spielberg and Robin, I'm going too much. Sorry.
No.
I'm already going into like the story bit about this. Can you tell I'm really excited to talk about this movie?
You honestly, that's the first I'm even realizing any of that.
This movie is in one of the all-time great genres, which is dads, if you have a job, quit it. Go bankrupt and spend time with your kids.
Like the Santa Claus.
Yeah.
The Santa Claus is a very different situation because he actually gets a job in that movie. It's the front. He gets an upgrade position.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like he becomes like king of the world.
He changes careers.
But like there's a lot of like Mary Poppins is a similar movie.
Yeah.
And Mary Poppins is a masterpiece. I would like to be
Yeah.
clear.
I was gonna say those movies about dads quitting their jobs going bankrupt work.
Yeah, no,
That's
like-
the thing is they are good movies.
But it is always really like the end of this movie. He's like, "You want to see experience? Fine." Like throws the phone out the window.
Yeah.
And you're just like, "So what is the next step?"
Don't matter, man.
He just like
Don't matter.
He just goes like back. He has to move into Wendy's orphanage.
it's just like an elf when plays the dad. Come on,
Bob Newhart or James Caan?
James Caan,
The real dad or the elf dad?
It's like when James Caan is like, up yours, and you're like, what's he gonna do? And he opens up his own little private
Yeah.
publishing book company or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know. They make it work. Anyway,
Can we also say that your read on this is like a movie about dads, by dads, for dads, is the fact that it's about dads, for dads. What did I say?
it's a movie made by dads for dads about dads.
Yeah, and their sons.
And their
Asterisks,
sons.
And their sons.
And their
daughters.
Not yeah. Get
There's
the
two
daughters
kids?
out of here.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
There's two kids. Hey, the daughter doing fine. Don't check in on her.
No.
She's doing great. Yeah, she's not. By the way, she's also kidnapped
We
and
watched.
having to take on so much maturity. Anyway,
We watched the second half of this movie with
I
frequent
heard-
guest of the show, Mark Tilley.
I heard that you had started and then you had to pause this movie an
Yes.
hour in and then finish
we
it.
had to watch this on 3 separate occasions.
I watched the good part of Hook the first day, and then I watched the interminable part of Hook the
Okay,
second.
we're
so-
gonna get to that.
But the thing is, we watched the second half of the movie with guest of the show, Mark Tilley.
Yeah.
And there's like the part where the daughter is singing her song. And Mark just like turns to us and is just like, do we think that you realize her voice sucks? Dude, it's a little mean to
So
make her do this.
mean.
So
Oh
yeah,
my
we'll talk
god.
About it. We'll talk about it.
So at that point, yeah, it's in development hell around in the mid 80s. Dustin Hoffman is attached as Captain Hook, which is kind of one of the stable parts about this movie.
yeah, well, Dustin Hoffman staying attached for so
staying
long.
attached for so long to Captain Hook. I mean, like, who wouldn't, right? If you look at like which role do you want to play, Dustin Hoffman? Like, there's Peter Pan, straight laced, he becomes childlike, or do you want to play this like charismatic, whimsical Captain Hook?
Dustin
I'm like,
Hoffman is possibly the only person locked in this entire movie. And Maggie Smith.
yeah,
We'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into it. I think everybody does a great job in this movie.
This
Of
is
course. A great job.
yeah,
This is like a
Locked
really
in.
weird. This is like a really weird period for Dustin Hoffman.
it is
Because like
yeah.
obviously he'd won an Oscar for Rain Man just a
Yeah.
few years before.
Yeah.
Hasn't he already? Has he won?
No, yeah, but I'm saying he's won for Rain Man specifically. Like
Okay.
it's coming immediately in the aftermath.
Got
of
it,
Rain
got
Man.
it. Because he got Tootsie before.
Yes, which to be clear is Barry Levinson's follow up to Good Morning Vietnam.
Rain Man.
Yes, Rain Man.
Yeah.
No connection to Robin, but just a fun little
Yeah.
thing. And like Dustin Hoffman, like obviously had just he had kind of been like the actor for so long.
Yeah.
From The Graduate through all the President's Man, Marathon Man, Kramer v. Kramer, Ishtar, Rain Man,
Oh my gosh.
etc. And
run.
this is like kind of a weird period where Dustin Hoffman's like, what if I go Hollywood? And like, not to say that his other movies weren't Hollywood adjacent, but he came up in the new Hollywood. But then he just does like Dick Tracy, Hook,
Outbreak.
here, like mad
Mad
shitty. Like he just kind of does this like run where he's like, what if I just became like a Hollywood guy? Like I like that Hook is kind of in the middle of this.
Yeah. Well, and I think trying to think where. Oh,
This is all build up to his award-winning role in Megalopolis in 2024.
We don't have to talk about it.
yeah.
And his role as Shifu in the Kung Fu Panda films.
Which, funny enough, like I guess I don't know the name of Angelina Jolie's parents, but like
John Voight?
John Voight, yes. John Voight visited the set of Hook and brought Angelina Jolie with him, and at that point, they're looking around, and then Dustin Hoffman asked Angelina Jolie, like, what do you want to be? And she's like, I want to be an actress. And he's like, and he kind of had this side conversation with John Voight and be like, I don't know if your kid knows what she's trying to get into here. And then like nearly a decade later, they would act side by side with each other in an animated Kung Fu Panda movie.
They are both the Kung Fu Panda, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Wow, yeah.
So, but yeah, Dustin Hoffman stays attached. Spielberg drops out. And the movie continues through multiple rewrites. First thing you probably notice, like in the credits, is that there are 2 story by credits and 2 screenplay by credits. One name that is the same, who is pulling it up now.
Hart, right? James Hart.
James Hart, because they bring Nick Castle in to do some doctoring for some of the dialogue. Who's uncredited, but also did some script doctoring, is Carrie Fisher. Who script doctored for Tinkerbell's lines.
Do you know who Nick Castle is?
I do know who Nick Castle is.
Nick Castle is like, he was an effects guy who became a director, but he's mostly known for he is Michael Myers in Halloween.
Yes.
In like the original Halloween, just because he was friends with John Carpenter, and that movie was made for such little money, and he had an imposing build. So he just plays Michael Myers.
Has an imposing build.
He just like kind of has an imposing build, so he plays Michael Myers.
I love that phrase.
So this guy, and he goes on to like direct The Last Starfighter, Dennis the Menace. He just directs like kind of like comedies, but it's funny that he's
Nick
also
Castle?
It's just funny that he's also Michael Myers.
Yeah, that's wow.
But he's kind of the pick for this, and then he's the one who cast Robin Williams in the movie.
Yes.
Alongside Dustin Hoffman, who stayed attached this entire time, like, when we doing it? But then Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman don't get along with Nick Castle, who had cast them.
Exactly.
So they go to the studio and say, "No, please."
They had
fire
creative
Nick
differences.
Castle.
The Nick Castle departs from the production.
My gosh.
And Steven Spielberg comes back. And so once Spielberg gets reattached to the project, that's where it finally gets greenlit for production. So
I couldn't imagine. Was it I guess that's the question. Is it the same script Nick Castle was just gifted to Spielberg at that
Yes.
point, or massive rewrites happened in between?
when massive rewrites happened in between, but it was also when Spielberg became reattached to the project is when he brought in Carrie Fisher and also had James V. Hart do some rewrites on the script, particularly with dialogue bits.
He had Carrie Fisher specifically rewrite Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
This is like the period like post Star Wars where Carrie Fisher, like, she'll pop up in movies, but she's mostly just like one of the most prolific script doctors in Hollywood.
Yeah. That
She rewrites
doesn't often
so
get
many.
credited. Yeah.
She like rewrites. She's like the one who writes most of Padme's dialogue in the prequels. Because George Lucas like, I don't know how to write women. He's like,
Say it louder for the
and
people in the back.
he was like, you were one of the good women in my movies. Can you rewrite this? And she's like, sure, George. They can't just. George. This isn't. He's like, George. This isn't romantic. He's like, I don't know. It's something about midi-chlorians.
I mean, at least he or in some, I don't know, in some fantasy world, he admitted it.
He was just
and
like,
at least had Carrie Fisher come in.
Yeah.
Peter Pan, obviously the original animation, which started as a Walt Disney picture. This movie also began in development as Walt Disney, but then would move to Paramount. So this is actually a Paramount movie, and they shot it at the Sony Studio Sound Stages in Culver City. This movie gets passed around quite a lot. One big thing that I first wanted to note, so Spielberg talks I'm going to talk a lot about Spielberg's post-text.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about
movie.
Spielberg.
I have a lot to say about Spielberg, particularly as he like looks back on this movie, because I think that's the most interesting part.
Yeah.
Because we'll get into like when the movie immediately came out, but like one thing that Spielberg will say, like looking back, is like, had I like gotten this movie today, this would have been a classic, like kind of more like an Alice in Wonderland like production movie where I would focus a lot more on the characters and we would shoot it in a digital blue screen. But because it was the early 90s, they didn't quite have all that technology ready to do that. So instead, they built all the sets practically.
Yeah.
Over 9 sound stages.
It's
Culver
an incredible looking movie.
Yeah.
Which is why it's funny hearing him say that.
That you
It's
would
like
pull
going
back.
back. I'd rather make this on a blue screen.
The thing
I'm
that's
like,
what's funny is he's like the one guy who like will say something like that, and you're like, probably would have worked.
I mean, it probably would have worked, but
like he's never like if someone else had said that, like Robert Zemeckis said that about Back to the Future or something, I'd be like, fucking red flags going up. But Steven Spielberg saying, yeah, I probably would have done it. I'm like, you know what, Steve?
There's
probably would have worked.
I was very aware of the budget of this movie because it shocks me. Do we have the budget on hand?
So the reports say it ranges between 30 to 50, with some claims saying it went as high as $60 million.
The listed budget was 48.
yeah,
That's the listed budget.
The
yes.
Spielberg confessed this movie went 40 days over schedule.
Yes.
And added for like $40 million to the budget.
Yeah, because I thought it was in like the 70 to 80
It winds up
million.
at like 80 million.
Okay.
All everything said and done.
Yeah, which is just wild. And I'm very aware of the budget going into this movie because I knew how much of it had done practically. I knew that the water, at the, in the Lost Boys like area and the pirate ships, whatever, all of it's very practical. And there was like water on the stages. That was whatever.
Yeah.
For Spielberg to say, I'd rather do this on a blue screen. When you watch sort of these big sweeping wides of the pirate ship, they are so constrained. Even after all that money and these massive stages, you still, I struggle a little bit with those stages.
Because you can see the walls.
You can.
You can
And
see the
I
walls,
think
which
it does-
I kind of like.
Because
Oh, it's a charm to it, 100%.
Spielberg like is obviously, and I want to do a big backtrack and talk about Spielberg's career for a little bit.
Let's do that
But
now. I think this is a
first,
good
I want
time.
to say like that he pulls from classic films for most. He's usually like, if you watch one of his movies, you can be like, he's kind of trying to ape this director's style for this because he's like this is something he grew up with. Like if you watch Empire of the Sun, that's like a David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia. That's what he's pulling from for that. If you watch War Horse, that's him trying to do a John Ford movie. Like he's this is like him trying to do like an Errol Flynn like 30s swashbuckler.
It sounds like you've been watching a lot of Spielberg's movies lately.
I've rewatched all Spielberg's movies up to this point.
I've seen Jeff. He literally has been sweating bullets just waiting to get to the Spielberg corner of this episode.
And I wasn't doing it for this episode, but I will say I'm very proud because I was doing it because the Blank Check podcast covered early Spielberg.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to watch those in sequence with the show. But then I was like, this could time out really nicely that I could watch Hook for both that show and ours.
Yeah.
So I played my cards in my schedule and I watched Hook perfectly for both shows.
Yeah.
Which I'm very proud of.
Mentally ill.
I'm deeply mentally ill. But why am I on this page? Okay, weird. Anyway, the thing about Steven Spielberg in this movie specifically is that this comes at like a weird juncture point for him. Because if you look at the arc of his career, obviously he starts with like, he starts as a television director, does Duel. They're like, wow, this is so good. You should make it for a theater, shooting at another 30 minutes for this. Gets an actual theatrical Sugarland Express, Jaws, Close Encounters, 1941, Raiders, E.T., Temple of Doom,
Just
Color Purple,
back to
Empire of
back
the Sun.
bangers, yeah.
It's just like he kind of has the run up through, I'd say, E.T. of just like, besides 1941, which is like a big flop for him that he acknowledges and is like, I fucked up on that one. That was me getting a little too high off my own steam after Close Encounters and Jaws.
Fascinating.
And that's why he's like, for Raiders of the Lost Ark, obviously I took a step back. I decided to just focus on the story we're telling, how to make this movie exciting, and I hired a second unit director. And those were his big lessons he learned for Raiders of the Lost Ark of 1941. And he's like, and then after Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T. is like a mega success for him. Gets another Best Picture nomination, his second after Jaws. He doesn't get nominated for Best Director, I believe.
He does.
Does he for
He
E.T.?
loses to Richard Attenborough for Gandhi.
And that's why he cast him in Jurassic Park.
That's why he cast him in Jurassic Park.
But so like he does E.T. and after E.T., which is like, I wouldn't describe E.T. is like kind of a kid's movie. It's like kid adjacent.
Yeah.
It's a perfect movie.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's not directly a kid's movie. It's him once again grappling with like his parental issues
Yeah.
in a film. But after E.T., he decides like, I am like craving legitimacy because people just kind of know me as like an action kids director. And I don't want to make him sound vain in this sense, but like he kind of is like, I would like to be taken seriously. I'm ready to evolve as a filmmaker into making serious films.
It's wild considering where he's at in his career, but I believe it. I believe it.
He's like, I would like to make serious movies because I think I've kind of done all I can with this. And then he does Temple of Doom, which is a much darker take on Indiana Jones. He follows Temple of Doom up with Color Purple, which is a movie that if you try to make that nowadays, he's absolutely the wrong choice for it. But you kind of read the story of how that got made. It wouldn't have gotten made without him. And he defers a lot to Quincy Jones and Oprah Winfrey in the production of that movie. He follows it up with Empire of the Sun, which is his, big serious epic with like 7,000 background actors and scenes and just this epic sweeping story about a boy who's lost in China during the Imperial Japanese invasion and occupation. And he's like, after Empire of the Sun, he's like, I kind of said my piece with like the kid losing his innocence story. I don't think I need to do that again. That's when he leaves Peter Pan, the Peter Pan movie at the time.
Yeah.
And then he follows that up with he doesn't like Temple of Doom and he wants to apologize for it. So he makes Last Crusade. He wouldn't have done like a third Indiana Jones if it wasn't for he didn't really care about the second one that much. And he's like, I feel like I let fans down. I want to give them something that they're going to enjoy. And he's like, well, how do I find my into Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? And then he's like, it's a father-son story. And that's the movie where he finally grapples directly with engaging with his dad in a movie, which I always find so interesting. That's the third Indiana Jones movie is the one where he has like the father-son confrontation. Because so much of like Close Encounters and E.T. are movies about the absence of your father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Last Crusade of the movies finally has the father-son confrontation.
Yeah.
Which I'm why that movie is so good because it's how he forgives his dad. It's the end with Indiana, let it go. And then after that, for inexplicable reasons, he makes Always, which is a movie that like he just must like airplanes or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So have you ever seen Always?
No.
Always is like, it's him trying to do like a 40s, like if Angels Had Wings, like romance sweeping movie about like a ghost played by Richard Dreyfuss. But the movie ultimately is about Richard Dreyfuss as a ghost. And he's trying to get his widow to like sleep with this hotshot young pilot. And John Goodman is also there yelling at everyone the whole movie. It's like actually kind of okay. It's like very watchable. It's not like very good, but it's watchable.
I think everyone at this table would agree. It's like, how should I?
Even Spielberg's worst movies are very watchable.
I was going to be very careful on saying that exact like Spielberg's worst, but yeah, I would agree.
He has never made a movie that is not watchable.
Yeah.
Even when you don't like what's happening on the screen, you're like, this is still like the camera's moving really cool. It's pretty engaging.
Yeah,
like it's like everything he makes has an energy to it still.
Yeah.
Even this movie, which I don't like very much, still like you're watching it and you're like, this is impressive. But anyway, he makes Always, and that's when he like is in, he's trying to figure out what to do next. He has his kids. He's realizing on the sets of these movies, he's never seen his kids.
Yeah.
And he's feeling afraid that he's turning into his father. And is going to have a complicated relationship with his kids.
Solution: make a movie.
Yeah, solution: make a movie about it. He does take
and
like
leave my kids.
Men will do anything but go to therapy.
He does take like a 2-year break somewhere around this point.
Yeah.
But then he's like, what if I just like, I'm going to put all these feelings into my next project. And he's like, he loops back to Hook. And the thing ultimately that I think like is the fatal flaw of this movie is the lesson Spielberg learns from it. Because if you look at his filmography, this is him going back to making a kids movie. The thing ostensibly he hasn't done since E.T., but I'd even call this more of a kids movie than E.T.
Yeah.
Like E.T. Works on a different level that I don't think this does.
Yeah.
But in Hook, he's very much like, this is a movie essentially about, I've become too business-centered. I've become like separated from my roots, which is I was a director of like, I'm craving this legitimacy and these serious movies. I need to kind of go back to my roots and kind of push away from this. And ultimately, it's this very like deeply psychological thing that happens to him. Because the lesson he takes in this movie is not the lesson of the movie. After Hook, Spielberg's reaction to Hook is
Jurassic Park.
I didn't connect to that in the slightest. Like he ultimately says like, I like the first 40 minutes of Hook. Yeah. I don't like the rest of the movie.
He likes the third act.
He likes the epilogue specifically.
Yeah.
But he's like, I like all the stuff in London. I don't like the stuff in Neverland. I wasn't connected to that. Ultimately, that's the thing about me is I like all the stuff in London. I hate the stuff in Neverland. But
I agree.
But the thing about like where he comes after this is his lesson from this movie is the problem wasn't that I was running away from being a kid. The problem is that I was running away from embracing like I was running away from something else. And it's like, I don't want to use the term the darkness, but immediately after this, he has this moment where he's like, I need to just grapple with the Holocaust. Because he doesn't, which is like very weird. Because he doesn't make Jurassic Park as he wants to. He makes it to fund Schindler's List. But there's like this very weird diverging point post Hook and before Hook, where all the movies before Hook have a certain degree of immature. I don't use this as an insult, but a degree of immaturity to them. of a young filmmaker. After Hook, every movie has like this darkness to it that's not present in his earlier work, except for maybe Temple of Doom. Because even Empire of the Sun, while a very dark, sad movie, it's about a kid and the wonder that this kid still finds in like a tough situation.
Yeah.
Post Hook, he makes Jurassic Park, which is a very serious movie. And so being about dinosaurs, that's a very serious movie about like corporate malfeasance and these ideas that he never grappled with before. He makes Schindler's List, which is probably his best movie, where he finally like, grapples with the anti-Semitism he encountered as a kid, with his heritage, and just like finally embraces a certain degree of darkness in his work. And then you look at all of his films after that. He doesn't make another kids movie for 25 years after Hook. He doesn't make until BFG in 2016, which he makes because he makes because he has grandchildren.
Oh, okay.
But if you like take the period between Hook and BFG, it's some of his best work, and it's some of his like most thorny dark work. Because Lost World Jurassic Park is like its own thing, but that's still a pretty dark movie when you watch it. Yeah. Saving Private Ryan, Amistad.
It's such a wild thing for Hook to miss the mark on him, both like as a filmmaker, as an artist, and then as like a person, a human being, that he literally is just like, there's something deep inside of me that I cannot like get out in a way.
Like I
don't want to make a joke that it's like, oh, then go to the deepest, darkest place of human history, the Holocaust. But like for him to tap into that and sort of like lay himself out there.
Yeah.
And it's less about him being Jewish in this case and more about him just like all this suppressed shit.
Because he's
That's
like,
crazy.
why didn't Empire of the Sun and Color Purple connect in the way that I wanted them to? And it's because he's rejecting that darkness in those movies. He's still trying to be Steven Spielberg making these darker movies. And it's post Hook where he's like, me running back to being a kid is the wrong approach.
Yeah.
That's not what I should do. I need to finally embrace this.
Wow.
And
I agree with everything you said.
but I
still think it's one of his best movies.
but I still want to like, because post like, I got up to Saving Private Ryan, but like, I'm just going to quickly read off the run because it's like Saving Private Ryan, AI, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can, Munich, The Terminal, Indiana Jones, and The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Those are such like, it's so different than anything. That run is so different than anything else. All those movies are like concerned with, ethics, like deep morality.
Yeah.
They're all have like a sadness to them, a wistfulness. Even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is weirdly this movie about I'm growing old, I don't know my son, and I don't recognize my country anymore. Like the entire first act of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is so much Indiana Jones being like, this country is just like becoming so conservative and I don't know what to do about it. There's no place for a guy like me anymore. I'm going to England. Which I think is very, if we're not talking about, it's not Steven Spielberg podcast, but if we were covering that movie, so much, that movie is so much more interesting than people give it credit for.
Well, one thing I would say is like, I think a lot of his earlier movies do deal with a lot of the same like subject matter, what you're talking about. But the only
is the emotional honesty.
But it's mostly honesty that I think is the important differentiation. And I definitely agree. Like pre and post Hook is like a moment. Part of that is because like he had such a hard time on the production of Hook itself that it kind of broke him as an individual.
But like you compare like Close Encounters with War of the Worlds, which are 30 years apart, and they're two different movies about the exact same idea. First Contact, aliens show up.
Yeah.
They're both very different.
Oh, yeah.
Close Encounters is a very optimistic view of that.
Yeah.
War of the Worlds has a very pessimistic view of that.
Yeah.
But even though like the alien part is like optimistic, pessimistic, if you look at like the father figure in those movies, they're essentially on the same journey. They're two dads who can't connect with their kids.
Yeah.
And Close Encounters ends with him just leaving. And it's like Spielberg trying to understand, why did my dad leave? And it's like he creates a fan. The movie even ends with When You Wish Upon a Star. It's him creating the fable of my dad left because he had a higher purpose. And that's the story I'm going to craft and tell myself.
It's a good choice of word, the fable.
Yeah. But then War of the Worlds, same idea. The father who can't connect with his kids. And that movie ends with Tom Cruise just going home, a place he hasn't been in 5 years in the movie. Is he finally just goes home and talks his ex-wife like a normal person, which is crazy for Tom Cruise to do in a movie.
I think something that you're absolutely right, Jeff.
Yeah.
This is not a Steven Spielberg podcast.
Yes.
That being said, I think to address like the mini elephant in our little personal room is that you and I both know that I've been slightly more critical of Spielberg's latest movies.
Yeah.
Like The Post or Bridge of Spies. Like,
when's the last time you watched The Post? I would like to be clear about something.
Been a hot minute.
Stuart, I'd like you to sit down, get yourself a nice little glass of something. I'm talking like, maybe a little bit of whiskey, maybe a red wine. Throw The Post on. You will be fucking like on the ceiling by the time Jesse Plemons walks into the room and is like, give me every single document you have. I need to read them all for validation.
So
Bob Odenkirk's like throwing papers everywhere.
Because like I'm also like I was fairly critical about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I do like some of his earlier darker post-Hook work, like Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Minority Report, War of the Worlds. Like all those movies I do quite like. And then afterwards, like I'm trying to sort of articulate this the best way I can. Like I think because boring is obviously the wrong term. I'm not going to say any of these movies are boring per se, but I do kind of feel like Spielberg kind of gets like, and this is partly at my own fault, and I'm willing to admit it's my own fault that like when I think of a Steven Spielberg movie, like I have a certain view in mind of what it's going to be.
Because this is such a dividing line.
Both pre-Hook and post-Hook. But there's something that happens like post-Crystal Skull Spielberg. I think that's the third era of Spielberg that should be analyzed is post-Crystal Skull Spielberg. Is where we get this more like very, very like grounded-esque low concept sort of movies. And I feel pretty.
It's the Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, The Post run, and it's the run of Spielberg being extremely civically engaged,
right?
And like being friends with Barack Obama,
yes,
where he's just like
you have.
It's like kind of weird when you look at like his eras.
You have like the in between movies that are like the outliers, like BFG and Ready Player One.
BFG,
but
that movie's also not very good.
But here's where I maybe we collide a little bit more is because then you and I both went and saw The Fabelmans together.
Yeah, that movie is incredible.
Which I think is probably like of all of his movies the most like grounded, realistic. Because there's nothing politically crazy happening. There's nothing like socially. It's literally just a family.
The Fabelmans is like
It's
the
a
fucking
family.
skeleton key that you put in every other one of his movies, and it just kind of unlocks something.
That's a really good analogy.
That is a great analogy.
I'm gonna shake your hand.
Like you watch,
But yes, I just wanted to say, like, when I got to The Fabelmans, like, there was that skeleton key moment where when I watched the movie, it's like, okay, I think I kind of sort of understand more of Spielberg now. Like, it doesn't necessarily make me like The Post or Bridge of Spies or even War Horse more.
Yeah.
But I do kind of like, when I watch The Fabelmans, is like, okay, I get his deal.
The
like,
thing
I
about
understand.
The Fabelmans is that's all that movie is very relevant here because that's a movie about it's him just saying my biggest insecurity and problem is I can only process things through movies.
Yeah.
I struggle even in my like darkest emotional moments not to think about where I'm going to put the camera in this scene.
Yeah.
And I think it's about a guy who just retreats back into
His art. Yeah.
And the things he likes because
Yeah.
he's afraid to face the reality of his life.
Yeah.
That's what The Fabelmans ultimately is about.
Yeah.
And it's also what Hook is about.
Yeah, I feel like Hook is like the opposite of that, where it's just like it's a lot of like escapism.
Yeah.
But for escapism's sake.
Yeah.
But this, to bring it all back to Hook, because I think, and tell me if you think I'm misrepresenting your views here, is I hear you say like there is a pre-Hook and there's a post-Hook, and Hook is that movie where he goes back to that like whimsical, surrealist, syrupy Spielberg vibe, but it doesn't work for him, and like not for his own personal sense and critical sense. Yeah. Like both the critics think it doesn't work, and Steven Spielberg himself doesn't think it works for him to go back to that. And the lesson that he takes away, which is not the lesson of the movie, is to go into that darker space. My reading of that though is and Spielberg would probably disagree with me when I even say this, is like, I think of Hook as like the last hurrah of that era. I think like Hook is such a good capstone movie to have like, listen, this is my last, this version of me that I'm going to put out there, because everything after this is going to be a different Spielberg. When people talk about Spielberg today, and I have said this myself, though I have a differing change of heart since The Fabelmans, but like, you've heard this a lot where it's like, remember when Spielberg was good? Like you guys even heard like film bros say that before. Remember when Spielberg was good?
He don't miss.
Remember the Raiders Spielberg? Remember E.T. Spielberg? Remember Jurassic Park Spielberg, even though Jurassic Park was after Hook?
I would like to be clear about one thing. When I say I dislike this movie, this is still like probably a 5 out of 10 because he's just so good at his. He's just because he's so good at his job. I'm still like pretty
give
engaged.
it a 6.
It's a 5.
5.
I had to give it a negative.
Flat out wrong. So no, but I see this movie as, because I agree with everything you're saying, but that just makes me lean more into my feeling of like, this is a celebration of Spielberg's growth as a film director to make like, this is what the classic Spielberg movie looks, feels, and sounds like. And I'm not going to make one like this ever again after this. This is it. This is the last one. And putting that in the perspective of Peter Banning's character of like, now he's grown to be like very more business oriented, not in touch with his kid's side. And the takeaway lesson that he has to embrace his inner child to be able to connect with his family and realize that the dark, depressing professionalism of his life is taking him away from his family. All those things are great. And I realize that's not the lesson he takes away from it, but I do still think it is such a good overall picture of like, these are the lessons I've learned in my early career, but now I'm going in a different direction.
What's so funny is applying all of that to a boy who doesn't grow up. I think there is a real obvious disconnect there. And I also want to say, I was ready, and you and I, Stuart, have been talking about how we're going to be like 2v1 Jeff this movie.
Yeah,
and
I'm
be
starting
like,
to feel a little different.
I think the 2v1 is switching on you, Stuart. I'm so sorry. But it was like,
okay.
I was ready to defend this movie tooth and nail. But to use Peter Pan as a way to talk about like your kids and a dad is such a weird move.
I think it's the perfect move, because when he like, first off, like, should we get to talking about the movie itself? There's a lot of on-set stuff I want to talk about.
We can
and
talk
the
about that
production
through
stuff,
the movie.
but I think we can talk about it through the movie.
There are 2 quick things I wanted to say before we get into the movie.
Yeah.
And Becca, did you have to finish was that your full thought?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to make sure I didn't cut you off. But there's this 2018 quote from Spielberg, which weirdly comes with him right after making Ready Player One, it comes because he's talking about how difficult the production of Ready Player One was. Where he's like, the 3 hardest movies I've ever made in my life were Jaws, Saving Private Ryan, and Ready Player One. The 2 worst experiences I ever had on set were Hook and Jaws. It's just like this very weird, like.
The hard on set experiences he had on Hook, combined with the fact that he's, again, in sort of the big studio fray, which gets tiring for every single film director will come out and say, like, when you're working for the big conglomerate studios, like, that's a pressure on its own right.
Spielberg is known for being very efficient on set, and the fact that this movie went 40 days over budget is very telling.
Well,
because I want to read this quote from him.
Yeah.
Where he's just said, I felt like a fish out of water making Hook. I didn't have confidence in the script. I had confidence in the first act and I had confidence in the epilogue, but I didn't have confidence in the body of it. I didn't know what I was doing, and I tried to paint over my insecurity with production value. The more insecure I felt, the bigger and more colorful the sets became.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Whoa,
I totally read that. And so can I tell you something anecdotal a little bit?
Yes.
So I also came into this thinking like, I'm going to defend this movie tooth and nail. And then before I watched this, I wanted to take a step back and think, okay, before I go back and watch this movie and relive like my whimsical, like favorite nature, let me look and see, like, why does this movie get the hate it does? Why does Jeff talk trash about this movie? Like, I really wanted to do my own little independent deep dive of it.
Spielberg is like probably my favorite director, and this is of course the one movie we have to talk about from him.
So I looked into it, and then I heard that very same quote that like Spielberg even said that he really liked the first act and he likes the epilogue, but he didn't feel good about the Neverland sequences. And how a bunch of other critiques of this is the same thing, that once the movie takes you into Neverland, then it falls apart. So I'm like, okay, I hear all this. Okay, I'm going to start watching this movie. And I'm waiting for that needle to drop where I'm like, in Neverland, I'm like, okay, I see this not working anymore. And that never happened for me.
Really?
In this movie, I'm waiting.
I know the exact moment it happened.
So
for
like,
me.
there's like one moment I feel like I can say slightly, somewhat. I was like, okay, I can see it. Like if you're like on this like narrow pipe balancing yourself, like where do you fall off? And it never fell off. But there was a part where I feel like it almost teetered the balance. And I'm trying to think of the exact.
That's a good analogy.
Trying to think of the exact like part, because it wasn't when he got parachuted in Neverland. It wasn't when he had the first interaction with Hook. It wasn't when he got raised by the mermaid's clam into the Lost Boys world. It wasn't any of that. I think it was like probably like first like training sequence when he's like trying to be taught how to be Pan. There was that moment where I thought like, okay, like I get that this movie like predominantly is going to be about him like trying to find his inner Pan self, and the backstory B plot is Hook trying to like get at Pan by being the better father, which those sequences I love, by the way.
Yeah.
There was like a moment I had this thought where I thought, like, there is like a C plot missing here. Underneath the training sequences, underneath the Hook trying to be the better dad, there's like a C plot that's, oh, Piper, are you welcoming her into your lap? Okay. Just I'm
engaging.
Okay, good. Oh, careful. She is totally cool with like pets. After a little while, you got to like know when the gauge of when she'll like perk her ears up, and that's like, okay, no more. But like, you're doing fine. This is good. Becca is petting my cat. My cat just jumped on her lap. This is great. Get a cat, guys. But I don't know if you guys felt this way. Like there was like a moment where I felt like there was a C plot missing in this movie where I thought like, what is Robin learning while he's training to be Peter Pan? Like,
the answer? Nothing.
Honestly.
And like, I can't argue against that point because you're right, but I will say that the Tinkerbell sequences, which get a lot of hate, there is a interpretation of Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell and her interactions with Pan that I think like viewed in a certain way can really sing on its own and stand on its two legs. Yeah. You want me to? Yeah. And so like, while I know that bit often gets trashed upon, like I think viewed in a certain light, there is a way to view the Tinkerbell Peter Pan sequences that really are able to stand on its own two legs and sing on its own. Now I know like that is the way I view that Tinkerbell Peter Pan relationship. It's an unrealized plot point that doesn't get fully fleshed out in the movie. I'm totally willing to admit that. But I feel like even though it partly feels unfinished, I mean, the last scene with Tinkerbell and Peter Pan is what really saves that whole bit for me.
Yeah.
If you didn't have that,
and hurts for me.
For me, it completely saves because when you have that last moment of Tinkerbell in this movie, Julia Roberts, who I think is really good in this role, in my opinion. She is sort of that like, she is the in-between of like, is this a dream? Is this real? Or is all this like happening in his head? And that coda that she gives at the very end of like, I will be, that spot where you just wake up and you remember your dream. That's where I'll be waiting for you. Like that last coda there was like that. For me, it's like it allowed me, and I get this is different for everybody, but it allowed me to forgive that unrealized sequence of like, what was this like proposed like love beat between like Tinkerbell and Peter Pan that bumps a lot of people off the wrong way? Like, what was that? Because I also don't really know what that was, but that final coda is what really saves it for me. Because
that
to
final coda, we'll talk when we get that movie.
That Carrie Fisher wrote, by the way.
No, it still drives me crazy because I think like the Tinkerbell, if you move Tinkerbell's like dialogue from that like a scene earlier, and this is jumping to the end of the movie. I don't want to, but it came up is like he wakes up and he sees Bob Hoskins playing like the street sweeper,
and your first thought everybody has,
and I like the idea of leaving it ambiguous, and then just Tinkerbell literally shows up and is like, "Nah, I'm still here, baby."
But, like, but here's the thing: like that scene didn't take away the ambiguity of it.
I mean, she's there, she's hanging out,
but like she's also there when he's in London.
You know what would have been cool is if he thinks he sees Tinkerbell, but just like the sun.
Well, that's what it turns into.
The end of Dark Knight Rises?
That's what it turns into.
It's the end of Dark Knight. It kind of does, but like,
does
it?
That's the whole point, is like, because who is his only connection to Neverland when he's in London other than Wendy handing him the book? It's Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
And so the idea that like, yeah, he sees a regular street sweeper, Bob Hoskins. That makes sense. But
it's me, Bob Hoskins.
Jeff, it would have been worse if a woman casted by Julia Roberts walked down the street and be like, "Are you okay?" Like that would be like, okay,
it's Spielberg pulling from the end of Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
he's trying to do the end of Wizard of Oz where Dorothy wakes up and all of the people are there, just as like normal farmhands. Which is always kind of like a strange thing because we're like, Miss Dorothy, we found you outside. And like they're all in her house for some reason. But
this movie pulls a lot from Wizard of Oz.
Yes. A big touchdown for Spielberg.
I want to talk about Julia Roberts real quick because I know that's a big press point in this movie.
Talk about J. Robs.
Tinker Hell, as been called. So Julia Roberts is the Ewan McGregor of Attack of the Clones in this movie, where she pretty much acts to a blue green screen.
She is standing in empty rooms.
An empty room. And Spielberg will say on many occasions that he had always wanted to work with Julia Roberts because at this point in her career, like
she's popping.
This
was right after Pretty Woman.
I was going to say like Pretty Woman being like, I think that's her main like pop off movie, but it's not her. It's not her Erin Brockovich, though.
Yeah.
So it's like people are aware of Julia Roberts, but she's not like Academy Award winner Julia Roberts just yet. But everyone's like intrigued by her. And so Steven Spielberg will say like, listen, like I've always wanted to work with Julia Roberts, but this was just like the bad movie to do it.
Yeah.
Because those scenes, I've read like stories where it's like, I mean, both Spielberg and Roberts kind of are ambiguous on what happened on set. The things that I can imagine, though, is that those scenes were like the scenes that like Spielberg didn't have kids. He didn't have special effects. He didn't have anything to worry about. So he just like, let's just get this shit out of the way and done and over with. And there's even some behind the scenes footage where you just see Julia Roberts kind of sitting on a chair waiting for her take to go. And Spielberg's directing something about a special effects for the next scene over to the next soundstage. And like, it's just that Julia Roberts is very much seen in this movie as kind of an afterthought, which also kind of reads in the movie.
It does.
And so that being said, like I found a good like connection to Tinkerbell's storyline, even though as unrealized and unfinished as it feels. Save me. Where was I going? I wanted to play a clip. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play a clip of Steven Spielberg on 60 Minutes.
Oh yes, I know exactly what clip you're playing.
I hate Peter Pan.
His most recent picture is Hook, a star-studded modern-day fantasy about Peter Pan, the boy who wouldn't grow up, a character to whom Spielberg has often been compared.
Come on, lower them. Will you lower them down gently?
You heard him lower them down gently.
Will you lower them down?
Help me, Dad. It's got to go and go like that. Yeah, that's good.
He said he really enjoyed working with Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams, but when you ask Spielberg about Julia Roberts, the female star of Hook, you really don't get much of an answer.
Yeah, I just want to see take sideline. Get the ladder in here, please.
It was an unfortunate time for us to work together, but I think that Julie is a really, really good actress.
Would you have any hesitation about working with her again?
This is a 60 Minutes question, isn't it?
So
wow.
Yeah. Obviously, like there, you can like kind of read the room that there's like a little bit of tension there. Like I said, this kind of carries over into the next topic in terms of like production side of the movie. We already mentioned that this movie went over budget and over schedule.
Yes.
Spielberg will say like a lot of that is his own fault.
He takes the blame for it.
He takes the blame for it. But what I think is not written in a lot of text that people can read off of it, because there's a lot of rumors, is Steven Spielberg has worked with a lot of kid actors in his career.
But he has not worked with a lot of kid actors at once. In the same
this would be like one of his
movie.
like first experiences working with like an ensemble child actor cast. And this cast in particular, being that it was a lot of their first gigs, and a lot of them didn't know like the set etiquettes and things. And Spielberg did have to play the babysitter and studio teacher a lot. And where that kind of came in is like, I know a lot of kids didn't know their lines on the set. Robin Williams, there's even a story where like Robin in one of the scenes where like they're realizing who he is. You can barely see it because it's his off camera, but like you can see his cheeks moving. It's because he's mouthing the words to the kids to say it. Which is crazy that it's like the kid that is the one that realized it. That was the one who forgot his lines, and he does one of the best performances out of all the kids in that movie. But yeah, so, and I think like we've also, being film industry workers ourselves, like we also see like the consequences of working with like unprepared child actors. It's like a night and day with kid actors.
And like you said, Spielberg has worked with kids before many times.
Very well.
Empire of the Sun is a movie that is entirely contingent on Christian Bale's performance. He's like 12.
E.T.
E.T. Henry Thomas is like the best kid performance.
Oh my God.
And that movie has like larger kid sequences, but it'll just be like a
Haley
scene.
Osment.
He'll work with Haley Joel Osment in AI, which is a movie entirely on a kid's back. And I think like the mistake that and it's not a mistake because it's Peter Pan. You have to have the Lost Boys.
Yeah.
You can just like not have them.
Right.
Just they don't Captain Hook's killed them all off screen. Would have been crazy. But like he runs into that problem of like with kid actors, they need extra time.
Yeah.
Each of them kind of needs a personal touch.
Yeah.
And you only have them for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And in some of their scenes,
a lot of the movie.
Yeah, they're in a lot of movie. And then sometimes they're acting in a scene with Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
Who is notorious for taking a very long time.
Yeah.
To figure out his scene.
There's a story where they were doing a take on the pirate ship, and Dustin Hoffman just wasn't feeling like he was getting into the character very well. And he was like making audible like moans about it. And Robin at one point turned around, it's like, hey, this might be a good idea. Try acting, which was a phrase that one of his co-stars told him on Marathon Man. And so Robin and Dustin Hoffman had an interesting banter back and forth because Robin, who had 2 Oscar nominations but no trophies, as Robin puts it, Dustin Hoffman, who has 2 trophies to show for. There's a behind the scenes bit where Robin's being like raised up in the wire, and he's like, oh, look at Hoffman over here. He's actually got trophies to prove his worth.
The two of them seemingly got along quite well.
I was going to say, is this a Jim Carrey, Tommy Lee Jones, and Batman?
I simply hate you. I cannot
wasn't quite
sanction your
that.
buffoonery.
Well, this thing, like we talked about Awakenings a little bit back, and that was a movie where like Robin was like a little nervous about how his interactions with Robert De Niro was going to go, because Robert De Niro, like multiple Oscar nominations, just one for Raging Bull. But the two of them got along very, very well in the movie, and they had a good banter with each other. And it's very similar with Dustin Hoffman and Robin. The only thing is, I read, if people can comment and tell me that I'm wrong here, but I read that Dustin Hoffman is a little bit more like thespian actor, like, and especially in the role of Captain Hook. It's like this is what I imagine.
He's a lowercase M method actor.
Well, lowercase m method actor.
He's not a capital M method actor where it's like I stay in character the entire time that we are working.
He did stay in character a lot.
He stays in character while he's actively on set.
Okay, got it.
Like once he gets there, he is Captain Hook.
I would love to see Dustin Hoffman as Hook in a grocery store.
Yeah,
but this is like a Dustin Hoffman take. I imagine it's like, okay, rolling, slate, and action. He's like, I hate Peter Pan. I hate Peter Pan. I just feel like he's that kind of guy that needs to like. Jamie Foxx and Django Unchained talked about Christopher Waltz's method for like getting it, where he just like will do like every take is a series for these kinds of actors. It's like there is no like one take cut. I need another one take, rolling, action, cut, rolling. It's always like, no, just keep the cameras rolling and give me a minute to like really
get into it,
soak into the juices of it all.
Stop me, Shmee.
And he says some bullshit like that.
And like, which is why him and Bob
Get off your
Hoskins
ass, don't
are
use me.
amazing in this movie together. Like, because like Bob Hoskins is that guy.
Yeah.
He's like, what about Smee? What about Smee? What about me? So good in this movie.
It's cute.
But imagine kids acting opposite of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're running into that, and then Spielberg said he doesn't have confidence in the script, so he's not committing to things as quickly as he should, and then the scale of the movie is so massive, and like,
you need fast decisions on the scale of that.
and like I don't
Caliber.
think this is like, you know, if this isn't bankrupt any studios. This movie made a decent bit of money. They're fine.
Decent bit of money, except
It underperformed, but it's still like it made a profit.
the thing is, it's like everybody going into this knew this was going to be a big budget movie, which is why Spielberg, Williams, and Hoffman all forego their salaries in exchange for a 40% cut of the gross profits. So while this movie on paper like made money, in terms of what the studio got afterwards, like that's why this kind of movie is seen as not just a critical flop, but also kind of a box office flop. Is a little strong, but box office underperformance. Okay, let me recalibrate here. So I just talked about Julia Roberts, talked about the production, all that
Do
stuff.
you want to start
talked about
going
the kids
through the
actors.
movie?
Yes. Let me just make sure. Looking at all my other clips that I have here. Okay, yeah. So yeah, let's just get into the movie. And this is where like the first scene that I love so much, that it starts off with a Peter Pan play. Getting it off the back that like we're taking this place in a world where Peter Pan is a child's book that's been written and performed as a play. So that adds a different level to the story, meaning that like when you hear that I am Peter Pan, you are this character from like from a children's book play. That's interesting. It's unique versus trying to take this in the context of Peter Pan is not a child's book that's been written or whatever. I don't know. It's always the first thing that whenever I watch this movie and rewatch it, I always like, oh, right. This takes place in a world where Peter Pan exists.
Yes.
Like,
They don't really address how it ended up in a book by an author, though.
Yeah,
they do.
Did Wendy
Did they?
write it?
No,
Is the idea Wendy wrote the book?
So in the scene, like when Wendy's talking to Maggie Smith, we'll talk about Maggie Smith.
It is me, Maggie Smith. I'm only 60-something in this movie, but I am playing ancient.
50. She's like 50 in this movie.
Yeah.
Does she have makeup?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I think they aged her a couple
aged.
years.
She's aged to be 90. Like because Wendy in this movie is 90 years
Yeah.
old.
Oh my God.
Dame Maggie Smith is only 50 in the making of this movie. But there is a scene where when she's telling Robin like the truth about who he is, she says yes, and like we told all these stories about us going to Neverland and all those, and our neighbor Barry wrote them down in a book.
Oh, I missed it. I missed
so
that.
like that was a quick little
A classic neighbor.
a classic neighbor named
situation.
Barry.
A little sweaty.
Yeah.
A smidge.
Like I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
if like I imagine it's like again, extrapolating my own interpretation of it, but it's like if you're hearing your neighbor's kids playing in the backyard and they're talking about we're gonna fly, it's like, oh, that's an interesting story, and like they actually write it down, and then got sued for copyright infringement or whatever.
Yeah. I read an interesting note the other day, and I cannot remember if it was a precursor to Disney's animation or the book itself, because the book came before, obviously.
Yeah, it was originally written as a stage play.
Oh, okay, word.
That's the original. The author, Barry J.M. Barry, who initially wrote it as a stage play. Hence why, like, you see all the stage plays where Peter Pan is normally played by a female. Robin would later be like, "I get it now, because when you put the harness on, I understand. Having balls makes it difficult."
Yeah.
And so
I read an interesting note, though, that pixie dust was introduced because kids were jumping out of their windows.
yes.
And so they had to have a caveat of like, oh, no, you need the pixie dust.
And then you can have the good visions, and then you can fly.
Yeah.
But you gotta have the dust first.
Well,
Yeah.
And that's when the cocaine crisis started.
yeah, the Peruvian marching powder.
Hey, kids, you want
With
some
happy
fairy
thoughts
dust?
makes you fly.
Put it in your nose.
I don't know. I read that
Williams-
somewhere, and it was
Robert
interesting.
Williams, not a stranger to a mystical powder making him fly and act like a child. Hey, he's sober at this point. I could say that now.
Yeah.
And so,
This
but
is the play.
it's the play, And it's the classic busy dad gets the call.
Yeah.
Hey, Brad, there's a man named Brad. We're going to meet Brad a lot.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm actually at my child's play. And you're like, a meeting tomorrow? And then his son, Jack, turns out it's like, you can't go tomorrow. Like, you promised to come to my game. And he's like, you're right. I'm a man of my word. I'm going to be there. Make it a short meeting.
Yeah.
Which I thought it was really funny.
His son Jack, played by Charlie Corsmo, who I just looked at his Wikipedia profile image, and I would just like to share it because it's really quite fabulous.
A Minnesota man.
It's him in 2007 standing in front of just a plaque that says Minnesota, giving it a muscle. And I quite like that.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you know who originally auditioned for this role but didn't get it?
No.
Joseph Mazzello.
Oh,
Who
yes.
would later go on to play Tim in Jurassic Park. Park.
It's true.
Yep. Just a little fun
I
fact.
think the boy who plays Jack is incredible.
He's
in this
quite good.
movie.
Yeah, I think he's great.
I think he's great.
All the kids are great in this movie.
This movie is basically all good performances.
What?
The performances are all, I think, at least solid in this.
I don't think here's a big bomb I'm going to throw. I don't think Robin Williams is locked in. I don't think he's believing what he's performing.
I disagree respectfully.
That's totally fine. I
respectfully
want
disagree.
to be wrong so badly because I love Robin Williams and I love his casting in this. I don't want to say he's fully miscast, but why do you cast resident adult child Robin Williams and tell him to play a resident forever child Peter Pan, but he's an adult now and he's really miserable?
I think
what
it's
a
perfect.
weird. It's a boomerang.
No, I think it's perfect because Robin even says that when he got the call to play Peter Pan, he's like, oh, I'm getting a call to play another cartoon character, Popeye. And he's like, oh, what do I do about this? Because he had some bad takeaways from Popeye. And then when he heard about, okay, but you're starting this as very straight-laced lawyer who doesn't pay attention to your kids. Robin, who just had his second child, Zelda, who was living in New York and moved his whole family to California, is also not a stranger to that conflict of wanting to be a dad close to your kids, but feeling like you're away all the time, particularly as it relates to Robin and his first marriage with Valerie and his first son, Zach. In particular, that was before they moved to New York, and Robin is doing all sorts of gigs all over the country. And I think that's a personal trait that I'm associating to Robin's casting, but also in a professional and acting case. Robin had also been known for being the cartoon character, Popeye, Mork, Survivors, even The World According to Garp. He's kind of Garp, playing that weird in between role of being a cartoon character and a serious actor. Garp. And so, but then people, I even played this clip in Awakenings, but as he's getting more into these serious roles, then people start to think Robin, he's very funny, but he's getting really good at the serious stuff. Yeah. That's an interview in his Awakenings press. There was an interview. It's so you're getting really good at the serious stuff. And Robin, who obviously doesn't really know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
He starts off with quip serious stuff. Do not operate heavy machinery while you listen to serious stuff.
I think Robin in this movie, it's fine we're getting to this now.
Can I just really quick finish my point?
Yeah.
Only one thing I wanted to say about that was I think it's perfect thinking who do we cast as somebody who has this inner child that needs to be repressed at first, but then comes out, and it's painfully too short of a moment in the movie and should have been longer. But that moment where when Tinkerbell tells him, it's what are you going to do after you get your kids? He's what kids? And it's you have to kind of bring back the adult and the pan together so he doesn't forget why he's there in the first place.
Yeah.
And
that would have been a very interesting conflict had they dedicated a second act
prolong
to it.
a little bit more. I will agree that that thought in that movie is a little too short, and that should have been expounded upon a little bit more. But I'm just taking a step back and looking at it on paper. It's who is that perfect person that's can play that role where it's they have this inner child. They're known for being this wild, bombastic, crazy, free living and never wants to grow up type of personality, but starts off being I'm a serious business person now who only thinks about work and has to learn how to do that again. Robin's perfect.
I think he's a perfect idea, and I think he's good as the business type, and I think he's good when he turns into Peter Pan. But I don't think his arc works in the movie, and I don't feel the connective tissue between the two, because it truly is just he like talks to Tinkerbell and she's like,
switch.
remember when you had a kid? And he has a flashback like, I'm a daddy. Which is like a well-performed scene. It works in a vacuum. The thing about this movie is like, I think it's missing so much in the middle. And yet I also think it's way too long. And it's like the stagflation of movie problems.
To back up a little bit.
You gotta cut 20 minutes out of this thing, but also you gotta add some shit in there.
I want to back up and just press a little bit on the arc that doesn't work. Yeah. What about the arc of him realizing he's Peter Pan didn't work for you?
I never feel Robin selling me that turn. Yeah. Because he's businessman, and then like he never has a moment of really selling like, I need to train to beat Captain Hook. He kind of just is there, and they just kind of bully him. And there's like the one kid who's like, you're Peter Pan. And he's like, sure. And
so like, did the food fight scene not like give you that much of like a little...
The food fight scene sucks. The food fight scene is the worst scene in the movie.
No, that's just wrong. No. Like,
such a disaster.
No, let's talk about it. But to take again, I want to keep us grounded to this like arc bit.
Yeah.
So the food fight scene did not read for you as an integral step to him realizing, like, because that's like his first lesson of realizing the power of imagination.
The idea of it works. The execution of that scene, where it's just like,
let's talk about it.
I need less emotional sweeping shots of children looking off camera. It happens a lot in this movie.
It's the Spielberg face.
It's like Spielberg face, but because there's 100 Lost Boys,
like
20
different shot of each kid.
Is it 15 Lost Boys, 20, 50, 100? I can't tell you how many Lost Boys there are.
Everything with the Lost Boys in this movie is like nails on a chalkboard.
Yes, I agree.
Like the big and then the thing is like, you want it to have this emotional payoff. I'm just gonna kind of jump to Rufio gets shot. Or no, he gets stabbed. He doesn't get shot.
Yeah.
He gets stabbed, and Peter Pan like grabs him, and he has like the same death as Indiana Jones's friend at the end of the beginning of Temple of Doom. He's like, you and I went on many adventures, and then much like Temple of Doom, Peter Pan puts him down, and we never talk about him again. Rufio, they leave his body to rot on the pirate
like,
ship.
you killed Rufio and you kidnapped my kids. Like, he doesn't forget about it.
No, he forget. He does the last time he mentions it. The next thing they're like, we're going back, boys. Leave Rufio. He's rotting. He's becoming worm food.
I cannot stand that. Like, we're saying like, I don't believe like his arc becoming Peter Pan, when I do feel like the movie does its diligence in selling you the integral steps that it takes to become Pan.
It gives you the steps. I just don't think any of them work.
Okay.
Like that food scene.
What doesn't work?
The structure of that food scene is they all sit down at the table, and there's a bunch of plates that are empty, and all the Lost Boys are grabbing food and like miming eating.
Yeah. Which is cute.
Big Spielberg W is that he puts sound effects here, so you can still like kind of hear the food, which is fun. But then like Robin some kid like flings something at him, and Robin decides to retaliate by pretending to fling food, and then you see food slap on the kid's face, and Robin cuts around, and he can see all the food now.
That moment, that singular moment, is great.
Yeah. The picture,
that's the scene.
But the thing is, I don't like the idea of that is Robin is beginning to act like a kid again.
Peter.
But yet I don't feel in that scene him have that moment. I see him like grab a little slingshot and shoot some food at a kid. And if there, there's something that scene's missing something. I don't know what it is.
You know what I feel like we're kind of alluding to, but the scene's not missing it, because where the food fight begins and he's, like you said, learning. I don't think he's learning how to be a kid again. I think he's just literally learning how to use his imagination, and it's through his act of using imagination, he's able to connect with these kids on a level that he was never able to connect with his real kids in the real world. But then as he's doing this, that's when the coconut gets thrown at him, and he gets handed the sword and he slices it, and everybody stops and looks at him like, oh, he just had like a Pan moment there.
But like, what does him learning how to use his imagination have to do with him becoming a good fighter? Because essentially we're trying to get Peter Pan back to being Peter Pan. And we're following like 7 different avenues to get there. And then weirdly at one point they're like, we're going to sneak onto the Jolly Roger and steal the hook, which never comes back into play. They just leave.
It's just a device so he watches him play baseball.
It's a very sweaty device to get him there.
Yeah, I agree.
But like, I just think like this movie needs you need to just like take this 30-minute chunk of the movie, crunch it to 15, and pick an avenue. And like he needs to be. It can't be like, well, he's learning the food, and he also needs to learn how to sword fight,
and also he needs to lose weight.
He needs to lose weight, but
in 3
also
days.
we have like a weird extreme sports track that goes around the tree.
Don't need
the
it.
thing that I'm not following is that you're saying like they need to pick a lane, and I'm like, the lane they're picking is they need to like teach him how to be a kid again, to be Peter Pan, and once that happens, the rest will come. 'Cause I think it's like the Russian sleeper agent effect. It's like you say a word and they're like, and they like finally like remember that they're Peter Pan. And so
I need him to have an emotional connection to returning to this form, because in this it's just him like learning like, if I use my imagination, I'll be like Peter Pan again. Or like, oh, my son likes to play baseball with Captain Hook now for some reason. This kid sucks. He's just like, this pirate will play baseball with me.
Jeff, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm going to ask you a clarifying question. Are you saying that Robin Williams in this movie does not perform to the degree that you feel like he has an emotional connection to becoming Peter Pan?
Yes.
I think that is so
I think
incorrect.
Robin Williams is
incorrect.
I truly think Robin Williams is good in this movie at being like the two different versions. I just don't think the emotional arc works in this movie. And I don't think that's Robin Williams' fault. I think that's Spielberg's fault. I literally will say, I think Spielberg fails Robin Williams in this movie.
Okay, so is the joy of being a father that is the final like tipping point that allows
It's a great idea.
It's in the movie.
It is in the movie.
I love you.
It is in the movie.
If this movie is about like that idea, or like the way you rediscover being a kid is rediscovering like your children, like through fatherhood, rediscovering like childlike energy. It's a great idea. The text needs to support it.
The text does support it, because in that scene in the what's the cave in Dagobah?
It's the cave in Dagobah. It doesn't have a name.
When he goes
Yoda's just like, don't go in that cave. And Luke's like, I'm going in that cave.
When he goes in the cave of Dagobah and has that like internal vision of like him being abandoned as a child, and that sort of forms his like sort of ideas of like what being Peter Pan meant to him, of like, that is my way of coping from rejection, from loss, and understanding like that is what he's doing to his kids by not being an attentive father. And so when he realizes, oh my God, like, remember when I became a dad? Remember how happy I was that I was a dad, because I knew like being that figure, I was going to be this person's like guidepost throughout life. Like, I can thrive off of that. And that's what I need. I don't need this like material things that I feel like are going to provide that for me. Like, just being like a good dad is all that I need to like understand the joys around me. And so when
but then why do we spend so much time with the material stuff of like food fighting and sword fighting? If we're
interesting, we're calling imaginary food material.
I know, right? But like if Madonna sense,
I think
material
it's a
world.
struggle. I think it's a struggle. You have the elements of a dad who needs to be mature and like steadfast for their kids and attentive and present. And then there's the childlike wonder of Peter Pan. And if you want both, the movie wants to hand you both. The Lost Boys represent the fun and imaginative parts of Peter Pan. And then I guess Peter Banning represents sort of the mature level of dadhood that's missing that piece. Exactly what Jeff is saying, that thread is very weird and not there because it's Peter Pan.
And that's why it's hard to
talk. It's a fatal flaw.
It's like kind of hard to talk about like my problem with it, because I think fundamentally the script is broken in the middle of the movie. Yeah. And like it's not like, you know, this scene specifically doesn't work and that's the reason. I think like the whole center of the movie, you have to take it out and put something else. You have to restructure the whole thing.
Because
less Lost Boys.
For me, it's as I kind of said earlier, like there's like that the C plot through line that I thought that was a little bit missing here, which is like, what is Robin learning during the training sequences?
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is quintessential in this, that's really in the movie that paints this out the most, is his conversation with Tinkerbell after he realizes it's Pan. And she says, so what are you going to do after you get your kids? And he's like, what kids? And that's like a thread that should have been like I think if One thing that I will 1,000% agree on is like that whole training sequence should have been part 1 of Act 2. Part 2 of Act 2 is him like understanding like, okay, I'm Peter Pan now, but like I got to realize why I'm here in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to use my now like remerged Peter Pan self to get my kids back?
Right.
And
really, he becomes Peter Pan so he can wield a sword and fly, and that's his way of physically beating Hook.
when he
Yes.
gets to like,
I agree with
Robin,
that. I agree
Robin
with
needs
that.
to have one more scene with his son at like the baseball game. They have to interact there.
The pirate baseball game?
The pirate baseball game. That they need to like a great Spielberg movie that does a similar trick to this is Last Crusade, which is a movie where about the father and the son at the beginning of the movie. Indiana Jones bursts into the Nazi castle and he's the swashbuckling adventurer and his dad is like kind of the pompous professor type. And they don't get along. He shoots all the Nazis. I can't believe what you did. And the movie is so intelligently written in the way that it slowly morphs them into each other, into becoming like one body, that by the time you're at the tank chase at the end, Sean Connery is doing like swashbuckling adventure things on the tank. He's using the pen to defeat the Nazis. And Marcus Brody's even like, this is
The
crazy.
pen is mightier
the
than
pen
the
is mightier than the sword.
Yeah.
But he's like Sean Connery's the one who's like riding the horse and he's jumping on. He's getting involved in the action. And Indiana Jones in the temple is remembering all the things his father told him and like becoming very bookish with, the word of God, the path of God, the penitent man kneel. And it feels so effortless when you watch that movie. The way the two of them like slowly are on this collision course into becoming like one body. It's like, that's what this movie needs is you really need like, it feels very forced when it feels like the movie gets to a point where it's like, okay, he needs to snap into shape now and just does it.
I almost wonder, what if Peter Banning was a Lost Boy and not Peter Pan? And in order to like tap back into that childlike wonder, because the Lost Boys also don't grow up, by the way. It's not just
Noodles
Peter Pan.
grew up, unfortunately.
Well, that's because he left Neverland.
Is his name Noodles or Marbles?
Toodles.
Isn't it
Toodles.
Toodles.
Yeah.
I got it completely wrong.
I just like, as you guys were talking, I just had like the thought, because like what you said that I probably agree with the most there, Jeff, is Robin Williams does need one more scene with his son before the big climactic fight. And I just had the thought, it's like, it should happen before the fight, but after he's become Peter Pan again. And I think this is like, because the lesson of the movie that I take away, even though it's missing the scene, which I totally acknowledge, is that being Peter Pan alone is not good enough to be a good father. And
Yeah.
that's a lesson that I take away from the movie based on my own personal
Yeah.
viewing, and I understand people who don't get that because it's missing a few scenes. That being said, I think the scene that is missing here is that scene where like he becomes Peter Pan and he's like, all right, I'm flying to Captain Hook and I'm gonna get my kids, and like Jack tells him, no,
Yes.
I am staying here.
That we need
that's
that
the scene.
We need
That's
that
the scene.
That you need two. I think you need two major changes. You need that, and I think Peter needs to be the one who initially wants to save his kids.
Do you know what the problem is that I think you just articulated, but I'm going to articulate as it relates to Hook?
He doesn't have agency.
No. It's Spielberg tries to have that scene and the climax together.
Yes.
And that is the problem.
They don't stack on top of each
because you see like there's like I am home, and then the fight starts.
Yeah.
And then he takes off the wig and he's like, I want to go home now, Dad. It all happens very quickly in that
And
climax.
it's just because he saw his dad wield his
You-
sword.
all
and
you do is you
fly?
split them up into two scenes, and you have that happen first, and then he has to have like a Dark Knight of the Soul moment, and then he comes back as like Peter Banning, but with the flair of Peter Pan. who
Dude,
can
let's
be a
go.
good dad.
That's it.
Can I
That's it.
pitch how I restructure this?
Sure.
My restructuring of this is he gets brought to Neverland. Captain Hook is like, this is like not Peter Pan. Well, let's just execute him.
We can say Hook does not need to change in this movie.
Yeah, no, Hook is great. I
His
think
whole
Dustin
thing is
Hoffman
great.
is extremely funny. Anytime it's just him on the screen, I think he's quite good.
Yeah.
But I think, like, in this scene, because, like, what happens is Hook is just like, we're going to execute him. Tinkerbell's like, don't you want to fight the Pan? Which is a good idea. I think that at that scene, Robin being, like, a bookish lawyer type needs to be what, like, starts this conflict. He needs to, like, try, because he tries to make a deal with Hook.
Yeah.
He pulls out the
checkbook.
The
He's
checkbook, and it doesn't work. I need you to bring that idea further. And I need him to basically like broker the deal with Hook. Because Tinkerbell just randomly being
not
like,
getting sold, but
I think you need him to be the one who initiates this.
Not Tink.
Not Tink, because now he doesn't have agency. He's just kind of like getting flopped around. I need him to have skin in the game.
But
I
at this point, he doesn't believe he's Peter Pan. So there has to be work done before he can start negotiating. Like, I'm gonna become the person you want to fight. I don't know if that's the argument.
because I think is it's like I disagree only because like him not having agency is the point. Like because he doesn't have agency as
It's
a
not
father.
exciting to watch a movie where a character doesn't have agency. So you like there's a middle ground.
He has
to be.
agency
There's
to
a
get
push and
his
pull.
kids
Both sides,
back,
Yeah.
but he does not have agency to do it by becoming Peter Pan.
And then I think the next fix is the baseball game. They're not going to steal Hook's hook because that's Spidey explanation. Robin doesn't buy this whole gimmick. He sneaks out of the Lost Boys camp and I'm going to just go get my kids and go home. Now, how's he going to get home? Unclear. But he's like, he's like, I'm fucking done with this shit.
Yeah.
He sneaks out. He goes to the captain's hook. He sees the baseball game. That's when he finds Jack and is like, come on, we're getting out of here. And Jack chooses to stay. Now Peter has motivation to go learn how to be Peter Pan again. That's how you fix that whole sequence.
I'll shake your
That's
hand on
great.
that one.
If
I'll
you-
shake your
if
hand
you-
on that
if
one.
you
That's-
do that, he returns to the Lost Boys camp, and now he knows the only way I'm getting out of Neverland
is to let the Lost Boys do their
is
do their
if I
work.
embrace Peter Pan and become the father my son doesn't have.
Yeah.
Because he's finding something in Hook they didn't have in me.
Yeah.
I think if you make those two changes, that does a lot to fix the problems I have with this. There's still like I don't think it fixes the movie, but I think it makes that Robin like how does he make these swerves work? Because right now he's just like he sees Jack with Captain Hook wearing like the outfit, and he's like, oh, and I just don't buy it. I just don't buy that. Like you would go and be like, oh, well, he's dressed up like a pirate. I guess that means I lost him and I got to go be like, I just don't believe it. I just don't think it works. Whereas if they have an interaction there where Jack makes the conscious choice to stay, that is the motivation that kicks Peter's ass into high gear to be like, I have lost my son. And that I think Robin could that would give him that motivation
both physically
to really
and
sell it.
emotionally. Because I think
Yeah.
that I would even say like that is what Spielberg is trying to do, but the problem is that it happens when they're not on the same screen
Yes.
together.
They're just looking at each other.
Jack makes the choice not through dialogue, but through certain scenes of, oh, I'm starting to pick up what Captain Hook is putting down. But that happens all while Robin is away.
Yeah.
And I agree that he needs to make that decision in front of his dad to his dad.
Yes.
Because otherwise there's no consequences. Jack, the one thing I will, I've conceded a lot of points to this. I still think it's a 9 out of 10 movie. But one thing that I do agree with even before we even started talking about this is I think the character that suffers the most in terms of like the structure of this movie is Jack, and mostly because of the lack of consequences of his choices that he would or could make. Meaning like the consequences of him saying, you know what, I don't want to go back home. Like, what are the consequences of that? In the movie, there are none because he doesn't say it to his sister. He doesn't say it to his dad. He doesn't even say it to
Mom-
Captain
Also
Hook.
in this movie.
Dude, mom, sister, chopped fucking liver in this movie.
I'm like okay with the mom I'm okay with her like kind of being on the sidelines for what the movie's trying to do. The sister is a big problem.
It is a huge problem.
The sister is like
Yeah.
don't have her in the movie. Just don't have that character there. If you like you're not going to do anything with her. Besides the
think
fact that
they
she's
need-
younger and she still believes in Peter Pan.
Yeah. I think they needed the whole well, aren't there 3 kids in the original?
They needed like the voice of conscience in the room.
brother,
as-
sister, and then the young Jack. Oh, what's his name?
There's because it's Wendy and then there's Little John and
Michael.
Yeah.
And like, if you're gonna have the girl be in the movie, she has to have something to do because this has big Interstellar like syndrome. Interstellar is like a perfect movie that I love very much, and the kid in that at least has something more to do. But if there's a problem with Interstellar, it's that Matthew McConaughey's big emotional sequence in that movie comes from watching Timothy Chalamet / Casey Affleck, the kid he has no relationship with. Besides being like, you drove the car and you are going to run the farm. He even goes to school and they're like, he's going to make a good farmer. And he's like, what about college? And they're like, we're not sending him to college. And he's like, okay, but Murph though. It's like, wait, what about the kid? What if he just said he's not going to college?
It's so disappointing. It's like Peter Banning is a bad father and it only affects his son. The daughter, don't ask about the daughter. She's perfectly fine. She's definitely not holding basically everybody on her shoulders, because even mom kind of like ignores it. It's just like, you got to go talk to your son. Your son, you have problems with your son. It's like, what? He can't be present for his daughter either. Like, there's no way.
I think it's a lot of like, you know, it's like one of those Fablemans, you know, skeleton key things where it's like you watch that movie and in the Fablemans and in real life, he has like kind of a quirky younger sister who's like believes in the family when he doesn't. And I'm sure it's just him kind of pulling that relationship. But it doesn't work. She's just like, she has that one sequence where she's singing and all the pirates are mesmerized. And I'm like, snip, snip, snip. Get this shit out of here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like that scene though.
Like,
Might be the only time that he even recognizes he has a daughter.
This movie has the same like
That ass.
thing with, I'm trying to think, like another movie that I strongly dislike is The Rise of Skywalker. A movie that I think has
That's a hot take
it
right
has
there.
the same syndrome as Hook, where if you kind of like snip any random scene out of the movie and you just presented it to me, I'd be like, seems entertaining. And yet it just doesn't work as like in one piece. Like if you showed me the scene of her saying, I'd be like, oh, this movie seems lovely. Or if you showed me like the final fight scene, I'd be like, oh, this seems cool. I just think it's missing like the connective tissue that makes all the scenes work. Because as good as Spielberg is, as much as I love Dean Cundey and like his, you know, the cinematography of this movie, I watched a 4K transfer that looks incredible. It's like such a beautiful movie to look at. It's luscious. I just want to like live in this world.
Yeah.
I feel at a remove from it.
That being said, I still think though that there are themes and messages being conveyed in this movie that while yes, there aren't enough particular scenes or maybe even far too many scenes where it gets muddled. I think that, listen, one thing I was going to tell Becca, but I said, you know what, I should save it, was like, remember The Whale? Remember how like,
yes.
I love that movie?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like I can see that The Whale like has a lot of its problems, and I just personally love that movie.
Yeah.
Because I have personal experiences attached to it.
And
And
I
that's
don't think
so
that's
valid.
Hook. I don't think that's
so valid,
Hook.
though.
No, I think because when I think about like when I rewatch this movie, like I cried 4 times watching this movie. And like I cried when that first shot of like Maggie Smith on the staircase seeing like Peter Banning. Like I just
That's a good
wept.
moment. That's
I
a good
wept
moment.
like a baby. Yeah. Because like obviously like both characters are now gone, and both actors are now gone, and it was just like that beautiful like. That's the thing is like I feel like this movie it's like a fine wine. This movie ages so well with time, in certain degrees.
Yeah.
That I think like it hasn't quite. Like, okay, I want to play one more clip because it goes to the idea that like, you know, again, Spielberg has a lot of thoughts about this movie post-text, and he doesn't shy away from it now, saying like he's very disappointed in how this movie came out. But again, like a lot of people said the same thing about AI, and now that's finding its own audience and becoming more like acclaimed. And so I want to play this quick little interview that Spielberg did.
Can I quickly? I think the thing that's funny about what you're saying is like, I think people were disappointed by AI because they kind of wanted it to be like Hook. Because like Hook had, the thing about Hook is like, it kind of depends when you first watch this movie that colors your, if you watch this when you were a kid, you're much more inclined to have like a positive view on it. There's a very generational divide in who likes this movie and who doesn't. I watched this movie as a kid, but it wasn't like a big movie for me as a kid.
Yeah, this was a big movie for me.
And I think that's like such a generational divide that comes with this movie. Like a lot of older people who are like older than our generation.
What are you saying about me, Ben?
No, I'm not saying. No, I'm saying people who are older than our generation don't like Hook.
Oh, interesting.
I think our generation is and like anyone who was born between like 87 and 97, basically. I think likes Hook a lot. I think anyone who watches it after or before that tends to be the ones who have the problems.
Well,
with
here,
it.
let me play this quick clip. Spielberg.
Stephen, I wonder if I can ask you something about when you look back over, an extraordinary body of work that you've made. Does your relationship with the movies change? And I ask you particularly because, I'm a film critic, and I'm sure that in the position that you're in, what film critics say doesn't make the slightest bit of difference. But I had a strange experience in the past couple of years. When I first saw AI, when AI first came out, I was not a fan of it, and it wasn't a movie that engaged with me, and I thought it was a misfire. In the last few years, my wife became really, really obsessed with AI, and she's a professor of film, and she said to me, "You've got this film wrong, you need to see it again." And I started watching it again and found myself reduced to floods of tears by it. And it is now my favourite Steven Spielberg movie. And I wondered whether your own relationship with your back catalogue fluctuates in the same way. Or has it always been that you know the ones that you love and you know the ones that you're not so proud of?
There is no video to this. It's just a podcast.
I don't give myself the opportunity, except through the eyes of my own children, to see my films, to watch my movies. So I don't go back and look at my old movies. I haven't seen AI in a long, long time. And the reason I haven't is I haven't showed it to my kids yet. And part of, the whole thing, and when we come out on Blu-ray, for instance, I have to certainly check the transfer from standard definition to high definition. But when I do it always without sound, just with pictures. So I really don't look at my movies, and I keep promising myself someday I will. I want to see Hook again because I still don't like that movie, and I'm hoping someday I'll see it again and perhaps like some of it. AI, of course, was a sentimental favorite of mine because it's really the first time ever anybody's ever worked with a ghost, and I did. I had Stanley Kubrick with me every single day shooting that picture.
Anyway,
you should save that interview because we're gonna need it in like 4 months. So you should bookmark that.
Yeah, you're right.
We're gonna need that when we do the AI episode.
That's incredibly deeply moving for someone to put their heart in, as much as Spielberg puts his entire being into his movies, and maybe having a hard time wrestling with those emotions again to watch the movies over and say that it's only really ever through the guise of his children.
Yeah.
That's deeply moving. I'm actually almost emotional.
Yeah, like showing his kids his movies.
There's a Entertainment Weekly interview that he did, and where they're going through the catalog, and very similar kind of emotional tone here, but the interview asks, that brings us to Hook, 1991, a movie my wife loves. And he laughs, says, "Bless her heart, I love your wife." And he says, "I get the sense you don't love Hook so much." And he says, "There are parts of Hook I love. I'm really proud of my work right up through Peter being hauled off in the parachute out the window, heading for Neverland. I'm a little less proud of the Neverland sequences because I'm uncomfortable with that highly stylized world that today, of course, I would probably have done with live action character work inside a completely digital set. But we didn't have the technology to do it then, and my imagination only went as far as building physical sets and trying to paint trees blue and red." So that's the quote that I look at, and I'm kind of flabbergasted a little bit. It's you would prefer a digital set, man? But I understand because why some people agree with that tone. But I don't know. We mentioned that some of these sets you can see the walls, and it's almost like Truman Show-esque, where it's I almost feel like we're in kind of a fake world, but I read that as part of the point. Again, there's a lot of things in this movie that I watch and I sort of attach my own interpretations that I'm able to extrapolate, whether it's through intention of Spielberg or not. But
you know what the unliked Spielberg movie that I go to bat for is in
Kingdom
a
of the
similar
Crystal
way.
Skull.
Not Kingdom of I mean, I do go. Kingdom of the Skull is just straight up good. No, the one that I think is underrated and is relevant to this is Ready Player One. A movie that
let him cook.
I think Ready Player One, while on its surface is a very silly movie, that is, if you watch that in you kind of go in with that Spielberg darkness on your mind. That movie is devastating. That is a movie about looking back on your body, on your life of work, and realizing you're going to die, and this is the only thing that's left of you is your work. And you're terrified of people taking the wrong ideas from it. That is what Ready Player One is about.
Interesting.
That's a movie about.
Yeah.
Well, they took this James Halliday. They took his Oasis,
Who is like Spielberg in this.
who's like the Spielberg in this equation.
Yeah.
They took his Oasis, and they are corporatizing it, and they are selling everything, and they are selling you action figures, and they're selling you skins for your characters. And Ben Mendelsohn wants to take control of it to put ads in it. And the only thing Spielberg has to protect himself is to find an heir for his legacy.
Station is my accomplishment, not yours.
Ben Mendelsohn, one of the greats.
One of the greats.
I'm so excited to watch the new season of.
Have you, mate?
I'm so excited to watch the new season of Andor, so that I can watch him be in it.
You gotta eat your vegetables, Ben.
If
how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm talking to the cops.
You been talking to the cops, have you,
I'm
mate?
talking to the Jedi, have you, mate? That if you want to, anyone at home, if you want to listen to a really good podcast clip, look up Ben Mendelsohn. You haven't been talking to the cops, have you, mate? It's like one of the best videos ever produced.
I feel like, funny enough, we're kind of going out of order on the plot because we've kind of hammered to death the second act of this movie.
Yeah.
I think we have kind of surrendered following the plot, and I think we should just kind of talk about the bits
I just
we
mean
want.
like as much as I could keep going about like the second act and the Neverland sequences, I feel like we've kind of hammered a lot of that stuff out. And where we kind of ended up on thoughts and feelings and opinions, like Jeff, you said some really insightful things that I do agree with that I think are very valuable and are good insights to the workings and not so much workings of this movie. Even though I may still be able to attach some like meaning to it. And
Stuart, I want to emphasize that the only thing that really matters when you watch a movie is your emotional connection to it.
No, but like, I want to make this very, very fucking clear that this is, I don't like this movie because like my dad was a businessman who ended up being a kid. And this is not The Whale.
Yeah.
I actually think this is a good movie. I actually think this is a well-made film that you could show to anybody, and they will have like a good emotional connection to this.
Can we actually talk about, I think, the best scene in the movie, which is when the family comes back from the big gala and Hook has taken their children?
Oh my God, that's incredible.
Dude, incredible. I almost wish they had that much gas through the whole film. They open the door and there's the big claw, the hook mark on the... Dude, and
it is almost kind of like a tonally dissonant part because it almost reads like a monster movie at that point. It's scary.
It's so funny that they have Hook and he's got this like big booming presence to him. Like he's the Hook shadow over
when
the kid's
Toodles
face.
is like hearing the dog bark and he's like, whoa, Hook.
Yeah, it's ominous. And then Dustin Hoffman waltzes into the screen with this big, gleamy, like goofy smile. It's just like it's very different, but that scene works so.
That scene is it's one of the best scenes.
Where is the Hook?
Like I earnestly and truly believe that I think the first 40 minutes of the movie are great.
Yeah,
I think that's what I wanted to talk about.
I think they're actually like. I'm not going to say perfect, but I think they are like, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, am I wrong about this? Because I haven't watched this in 5 years. Becca, when was the last time you watched Hook prior to this?
Ooh, a while.
Was it probably you were like younger? I mean, obviously you're younger every day, but like younger.
I thought you... wow, thank you. Wow. You did a Spielberg rewatch though.
I watched it in 2020. I just can't remember if you watched it with me.
I think that was probably the last time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I watched this 2 years ago because this is a movie I revisit like quite often.
I enjoy revisiting this. I think because I knew I was going to be on the podcast and I had this pretense that I was going to staunchly defend this movie.
Yeah.
And I have resident Spielberg as expert on the line at all times.
It's true.
My opinion shifted of this, but I definitely went into it being like ready to critique and ready to be like, okay, what is Jeff talking about, and seeing all of it.
Well, like I said, that's sort of the similar mindset I went into this movie with too, and I was waiting for that like needle drop act 2 moment to be like, oh, okay, this is what everyone's talking about when then the second act falls apart. It just never happened for me.
Yeah.
Like I was in every single scene in Neverland. Like even the Lost Boys, like the food fight scene, I chewed that shit up. Like,
quite literally.
Oh, like, oh my God. Like, and like the daddy scene with the teddy bear, like all that shit.
That's good.
And then he's and then like that's a third point of time of which I bawled my eyes out, is seeing Robin Williams flying through the clouds. I mean, come on, like, and I get that is through a recontextualization of today's standards looking back. Like, I get that's a different way that the movie works then versus it does now, but that's kind of what I'm saying, though. It's like
the sequence of him flying works.
It works, and then like when he lands, and they're like, "You can fight, you can fly, you can." And I'm like, "Oh, let's go!" I'm like, that is like my Avengers moment there. I'm like, "Fuck yeah, let's go kick Cook's ass!" And anyway, but no, all that to be said, we've hammered Act 2. We have hammered Act 2. Act 1, which I think objectively speaking, most people would agree is like the golden juice of this movie.
Yeah.
Because you talked about Becca when they're back from the gala and Hook comes in. I want to talk about that scene where they haven't gone to the gala just yet, and he's on the phone with Brad, and you see the kids that are routing around the bedroom, and he keeps like pushing them off. He's like, and there's this shot that's so good because like you just see like all the kids playing around, and then it's like the second time, the shadow, where like Jack is like marching like closer to the light, casting this big shadow, and the camera's doing this like tilt up but pushing in action, showing like the shadow like overtaking his father. And it's like, it's metaphorical in so many ways, saying like it's like Peter Pan's shadow being like, pay attention to your kids, but it's also the shadow of his kids.
It's a shadow
like,
of fatherhood.
It's a shadow of fatherhood. It's like,
there's such like a gentle and like at some points tongue in cheek, but it's also, we know what movie we're watching. All these little nods to him being Peter Pan. All these little subtle things like his shadow.
Like that he's afraid of flying too.
Yeah, there's a lot of dialogue pieces that are just little nods to the sort of anecdotal stuff of Peter Pan, and it's very sweet.
Toodles, I initially thought was actually one of like Wendy's brothers that was there.
I always thought he was little.
He
Little
just
John.
went fucking insane.
I didn't realize that he was one of the Lost Boys that came back, that just never went back to Neverland.
With all due respect.
I agree. Toodles is annoying.
Yeah, I'll agree with that part too. I agree. Like Toodles is kind of like Toodles to Toodles. Like
like I love a whimsical character, but we have Wendy here, and we have Wendy's housemaid.
Well,
we're good. We're good. What's he doing there?
Yeah.
But like, so they're after the play, and he misses the baseball game, and he sends his like assistant to go videotape it. And he's like, "Which one's your son?"
Devastating.
It's
That's
like,
so rough.
Oh man. If anybody who's had parents who did not show up to their baseball game, hands here.
I said it to
anyway
to Becca, but like, I think John Williams has a really nice score for this movie.
Oh,
he takes great pride in the score.
Yeah.
A few years ago, he put out a CD/digital box set of like, his favorite tracks from all of his Spielberg collaborations, and there's like 6 Hook songs on it.
Really?
He's very proud of this score. But during the baseball scene, I said this to Becca, like, it's kind of playing this like do. It's very like 90s like family movie score, and I just like it like activated something in me, and I was like, did John Williams invent the Wii loading sound effect?
Yeah. Keep going.
You're playing like the more orchestral stuff, but it's like kind of this like, it sounds like the Wii fucking menu when you're like making the Mii.
It's Wii Sports.
Yeah. Just playing the You Are the Pan.
Hot take. What's the best John Williams score?
And his whole
filmography. Drop it. What do we think? Hot mic.
All right. I mean, would I be crazy if I said Hook?
Schindler's
You wouldn't.
I mean, like Schindler's List is probably the correct answer. I think Schindler's List is probably the correct answer. That being said, like,
oh wait, I changed my answer.
Oh,
Catch Me If You Can.
Ooh,
which is my favorite Spielberg.
Thought of.
It is my favorite Spielberg, I will say.
Not often thought of.
My cracked out answer would be Attack of the Clones, which is like kind
Isn't
of.
that also Harry Potter?
No,
Wait,
Harry Potter's the one that he fucking phones in because of Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Stuart, do you know this?
Yeah.
That he's like so busy with Attack of the Clones and Catch Me If You Can that the Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets score is predominantly reused music from the first movie with 2 new tracks and then a track from Attack of the Clones that he just put into it.
It's great.
See, like I would almost want to say Jurassic Park. Like I'd almost want to say Jurassic Park, except that it gets bastardized in Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Like, because there's like a moment in Jurassic World when they finally run through their hotel room and open the big double doors and they see the park, and it's like the most underwhelming like version, like hollow husk of the score, and I'm just, it made me so sad.
Yeah.
My completely earnest answer is E.T. is his best score.
Yep, that is the correct answer.
Oh my God.
That is the correct answer.
I was playing the E.T. suite when we were painting our basement a few weeks ago, and the ending where it's just like, dun, dun, the drums come in.
I mean, the very fact that like Spielberg re-edited the ending of the movie to fit his score, like that alone kind of like speaks for it. E.T. That, I'm so glad you said that. That is the correct answer.
I think it has to go E.T., Schindler's List, Catch Me If You Can, if I picked a top 3. Which is just all Spielberg, I understand, but
Yeah.
Can't wait till we talk about AI so that we can get to him doing the Matrix style score for one sequence in the movie and then never doing it again.
But yeah, I feel like we can kind of sum up Act 1 in just in the sense that like as we mentioned, like this is sort of the more objective like jewel of the movie that a lot of people like talk about and love.
It seems like most people don't have a problem with this part, myself included.
Yeah, and
it sets up a movie that I don't think ever comes.
Yeah.
Well, but anyway, to that point, I think where I wanted to carry this, Jeff, like, do you remember? Well, Becca, let me start with you. Actually, like, what was your like initial ground? Like, it'd be weird to say like first watch of this movie, because I remember watching this like damn near when I was a toddler.
Yeah.
So like, I almost don't even want to count it as like the first viewing. But talk about like your origins with like this movie. I mean, also you picked this movie to talk about too.
Yeah.
So that also carries into it.
I don't necessarily have a lot of weight to the context of which I watched this movie for the first time, but thinking about it as an adult, especially for this podcast, is very fascinating. The first time I watched this, I want to say I was like either 7 to 10 years old, somewhere in that range. I watched it during a funeral.
Oh, wow.
My great-grandfather had passed away, and there was a children's room in the upstairs of the funeral home. And there was like 5 children at most in this whole funeral home, 2 of which are my sisters and then myself. And they just kind of left us to our own devices because they figured we didn't want to sit in the viewing room for forever. So they put Hook on. But enough time had passed that we actually watched it 2 times over.
Wow.
So adults are adulting in the basement, and we're watching a movie about a dad learning to be a kid.
Yeah.
Did I take the themes of that with any weight? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But thinking about it as an adult, I'm like, oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Of a movie about like adults in an adult world sort of losing themselves. And it's a funeral.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It almost makes me like, I want to watch this movie with like my parents now, like at my age right now. Because I feel like, oh, is she behind the curtain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
This looks like the raptor in Jurassic Park when it's behind the.
That is some good.
And they're like,
the room. But because I feel like when you talk to a lot of people about their first few watches, a lot, especially in our generation, a lot of it is like I was a kid and I watched with my parents either at the theater or for my case it was like home video or something like that. I think we own this on VHS.
Yeah, same.
And this was, I mean, in my family, like Robin was like it was a household name in my family. Like a lot of his movies were, and so I think this is one of Robin's like. Also, I think in context to Robin, it's important to mention like this is kind of the beginnings of Robin's like family man, like arc.
No, this
in
is
terms of his film career.
As much as like I don't connect with this movie. It's like major for his career.
Yeah.
And what it represents for the rest of his career. That he becomes like a family movie actor in some respects. And how it forges that connection with Spielberg that continues into so many other things we're going to talk about.
I think his character in Jumanji is very similar to Peter Banning, right? He was a child who got trapped, literally got to miss out on his whole childhood and comes back to the real world and sees... he kind of like he's very disgruntled. Yeah, very similar. It's very similar.
Yeah,
he plays this archetype. Like it kind of permeates a lot of his other roles.
Yeah, And
then of course in AI he plays Dr. No.
right. Jeff, do you have any like memories of like an origin story of when you watched this movie or?
So this is going to be a little brutal. I don't remember the first time I watched this movie.
Yeah.
I do remember I spent the night at my Nana and Granddad's house when I was younger. Probably like 10, 12 at this point.
Yeah.
And I just like needed something to watch because I didn't have any DVDs with me. And like they had Xfinity. So it had like the little free stream stuff. And I like kind of opened it up. I saw what movies were free and Hook was on there. I started watching it. And I remember I got to like 30 minutes in and I was just like bored and I turned it off. And I put like Jurassic. I put something else on.
Oh man.
So this movie's never really worked for me.
Even as a kid.
Even as a kid, like I'm sure
Always
as like
a
a
critic.
young
Always
kid.
a critic.
That's like the one memory I have of watching this movie besides for this podcast.
No, I mean, like I said, I definitely think I have memories of watching this when I was really little with my parents. And just this movie, mainly like when I was a little kid, like what probably captivated me the most was just like the look of the movie, obviously. Like it looks real.
And selling a kid on Peter Pan is a very short sell.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll watch it.
Yeah, an adult version of Peter Pan has to learn how to become Peter Pan again. And then Robin just really carries the weight of having to transfer over into that persona that I think while it may not work for like, I think people in their adult minds, I think like thinking back to watching as a kid, like I remember like buying that completely. And even like now I still buy it mainly because I understand why I bought it in the first place as a kid. Like when he picks up that teddy bear and he says, "Daddy," and I definitely can read in my adult brain like why that would be seen as being like, come on, really? But I remember like as a kid watching that and being like sold on it. Like I was like, oh yeah, he's Peter Pan now. I get it. And like we talk about the Spielberg face of all the kids looking off camera. Like that's a great point to make there. But it sells me. Like it sold me as a kid, and I've never lost that kind of feeling about it. Like even like when Robin is flying and doing all of his things and they're all like chanting like bangarang, like even then like it's still somehow like maybe it's cuz like it resonated with me a kid and I haven't quite learned how to like let go of that. It just because of that it still resonates with me to now. But
I think it's a good scene where he's just like, I have my happy thought. It's literally my kids.
Yeah.
And he's lost that because of one reason or another.
Yeah.
I just can't believe that Peter Pan would lose sight of something like that. And that's the unbelievability to me.
Because the fundamental like thing, like if there's movies playing with anything from the original text, it's like obviously the kids have the tough relationship with their dad. And that's like part of Peter Pan.
Yeah.
It's like the dad's mean to them. And like in the stage play and in a lot of the film adaptations, the actor who plays Captain Hook would also play
the dad.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
That's why in the 2005 movie, Jason Isaacs plays the dad and Captain Hook.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Disney animated one does that. I don't think it's the same voice actor. But like a lot of those, like that's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Is that like when they did the play, it would be the same actor playing both, playing into the like, is this real or is this fake world?
Is this a good segue to talk about Hook and Dustin Hoffman as well as Bob Hoskins?
We should talk about them, shouldn't we?
Because they are the part that makes the second act even remotely watchable to me.
The thing that makes this movie extremely watchable are Dustin Hoffman, Bob Hoskins, the insane cameos. Those are the three. Those are, I think those are the three things we have to summarize before we start wrapping up.
Yeah.
The cameos, Glenn Close as a pirate,
Amazing.
randomly. She's there, I guess.
Yeah.
George Lucas and Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
As the people on the bridge who float. What are they doing there? Phil Collins as the inspector who shows
Wait,
up at the house.
That is such a
Gwyneth Paltrow as young Wendy.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that is a really funny cutaway. I talk about that sequence where they find their kids are missing or whatever. It's so good, and they're like, "We need to figure it out. We need to find our kids." Cut to the fucking cops. like
Phil Collins.
Peter Pan called the cops. Like that's so funny.
Yeah.
This was that specific run where Phil Collins pops up in Hook and then Balto as as like the polar bear.
Oh.
And it's just like Phil Collins like getting into the kid movie game for like 4 years and then all right, no more of that.
Tarzan was 97?
Tarzan's 99, I think.
Oh, 99.
Where he just goes crazy on that soundtrack.
Yeah, no, I just thought to bring it up. Anyway.
But Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman.
My
should
God,
talk about
it's so my second favorite scene outside of like the Hook kidnapping is where he's just like, I'm cooked. I'm done. And he grabs a pistol.
Yeah.
He's like, don't try to stop me, Smee. Don't try to stop me, Smee.
Stop me, Smee.
Stop me, Smee.
Get off your ass.
Smee, you're playing a very dangerous game here, Smee.
I love how insecure Hook is because he has to be.
Yeah.
Who else beefs with a child
Yeah.
this hard as somebody who's so deeply insecure? And I love that he has this whole posse around him that does nothing but lift him up blindly. And he has these extravagant, like, what is his
Where's
job?
the carpet, Smee?
What is his job? If he's just a pirate or is he a commander? Like,
Because it seems like their ship never leaves port.
yeah.
it's like they're a pirate gang.
They only leave port to fly to London to abduct children.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And the scene where I'm trying to think, it was shit, I lost it. But yeah, Dustin Hoffman, who is one of the best things, and Bob Hoskins as Smee and his relationship with Dustin Hoffman. I love those two guys together.
Bob Hoskins is the best to be 100%. But then also, like, the thing he plays really well is that I don't think a lot of other Smees get into is that, like, he's just kind of here by force. He doesn't really want to be this.
He's definitely a prisoner.
Yeah.
Like at the end when like he's running out with all of the jewels from Hook's cabin.
Yeah.
It's such like it's so underplayed and I love it. Because he's like runs out and Hook's like, Smee, and he's like, yes, sir, I was just saving your treasures.
Yeah.
It's Bob Hoskins inspired casting for Smee.
Yeah. It's very good.
You watched the interview with him talking about Mario?
No.
Where he's just like, I've signed on to play Super Mario, and my son comes up to me and he shows me a little dot on a screen jumping around. He said, "Oh, that's you." And I said, "I used to play King Lear." It's like this really great interview with Bob Hoskins talking about Mario. But he's the best.
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman's the best.
Yeah.
It's like Dustin Hoffman is tapping into what that movie needs.
He's tapping into the version of this movie that's much like sillier.
Yeah.
That is a path this movie could have taken. There's like kind of just like a much simpler version of this that works, or there's the more complex version they tried to do that also could work.
Yeah, because there's like the Jason Isaacs Hook,
Yeah.
who is like revenge bent,
Yes.
not deeply insecure, and therefore needs to like whatever. And I don't need like a big emotional arc for Hook, but I love making him a small dick man.
People have been trying
He's
to.
a mean old man without a mom.
I think people have been trying to lock into Captain Hook. And like, I don't think the original tale or the Disney movie really have much of a take on Hook besides like he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something to the like the way that so many filmmakers specifically have tried to figure Hook out. Because this movie obviously has a very specific insecure take on Hook. Beyond just him being like a bad guy. The Jason Isaacs performance has a certain like revenge need to it.
Yeah.
The Jude Law, Peter Pan and Wendy film, his Hook is
I forgot about that.
is like a boy who grew up and is angry that he grew up.
Or shall we forget?
Yes.
Hugh Jackman as not Captain Hook,
No,
but
Hugh
as
Jack- no.
Hold on, we got to get to that part.
Oh, Christopher Walken's Hook?
Oh my god. We should.
Christopher Walken.
Can you bring up the Christopher
no.
Walken
What
Hook?
is that?
It's the 2015 movie Pan.
Oh.
The prequel.
Garrett Hedlund plays a young hot Hook in that.
Yeah.
Hot
Yes.
key word.
Yeah.
That movie's take is that what if Hook was young and also attractive?
Yeah.
Christopher Walken doing a tap number as Hook.
Hey, it's me.
Wasn't there like a lot of controversy over that ABC?
I think there was some problem with it.
Yeah.
The energy of that is that everyone's dancing around Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
He's like kind of in position.
Yeah.
But tell me when a Captain Hook has ever missed.
I
I haven't seen Pan
mean,
from 2015.
Pan, weird Nirvana scene aside, I think is just known for kind of being boring.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Because
What?
Hugh Jackman plays Blackbeard in it. It's very strange.
He plays like the pirate that would inspire Hook, basically.
Oh.
Yeah. It's I don't know.
That movie's like, what if Pan was a chosen one?
I almost want to watch the
Yeah.
2005 Jason Isaacs Peter Pan.
I kind of do too. It's been a hot minute since
I like
I've
that we're
seen
calling
one.
it the Jason Isaacs Peter Pan.
Well, because who plays Peter Pan?
Some kid.
Jeremy Strong. That's a name I just pulled out of my ass.
Wow.
Not Jeremy Strong, Jeremy Sumpter.
Sorry, it's Peter Pan 2003. Jeremy Sumpter does play Peter Pan. I can't believe you just pulled that out.
Shit.
That's crazy.
Resident female in the room here. Every woman knows about Jeremy Sumpter. Okay.
Is he hot now?
Is he like a boy toy or something?
Angelica agrees with me. It's because of this movie. It's because of this movie. The Peter Pan movie. Nobody should be lusting over a child.
I was going to
okay?
say, like, are people
looking up
simping
Jeremy
over
Sumpter.
2003 Jeremy Sumpter?
I don't think he's done basically anything after this movie. He's got a Jesse McCartney kind of like girlish face, but
yeah.
that's because he played Peter Pan. He needs to be a little like effeminate in some ways, as probably a nod to the stage play adaptations. I think ultimately there are better Peter Pan movies out there, but very few. I don't think people know what to do with Peter Pan unless it's like textbook animated.
You're
and-
either telling are just telling the story again, which is valid, it's fine.
so valid.
Or you're trying to recontextualize it, and which there've been good versions of. But I think it's hard to take a classic story and just like, I'm gonna change this up. You have to make some pretty drastic changes.
Yeah.
And I liked the David Lowery Peter Pan and Wendy movie that came out a year or two ago. That one it wasn't great. It was pretty solid. It was
Yeah,
enjoyable.
it's just like why take all the whimsy out of it?
It's a very like serious take
It's
on
deeply
Peter Pan.
serious. Stop making Peter Pan serious. That's my thing. Stop making it so serious. Keep him a boy. Keep
You
him a
should give
kid.
Peter Pan trauma. That's what we should do. Peter Pan has trauma.
He finds out that he does have parents, but they're dead
They're
and
dead.
brutally murdered by Dalmatians.
Oh yeah, like Cruella. Is there anything else we wanted to like specifically talk about?
Just like when they get home.
Yeah, the
and,
ending.
The ending, which I think is good.
They
as
all
well.
show up and they fly through the window.
Yeah.
It's very the flying stuff looks great through the whole movie.
Yeah.
Whether it's like the sequence of him flying or like just the specific like they fly in through the window. Like it feels effortless in a way
Yeah.
that Spielberg's really good at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the final battle with, again, I know one thing you said, Jeff, is like if you take scenes out in a vacuum, like, it's pretty entertaining and cool. Speaking in the context of just scenes in a vacuum, like the final fight scene climax,
It's
like
good.
goofy
It's fun.
but fun.
It's fun.
And I like it. I like all the intricate devices the Lost Boys use.
That's
against
when the
pirates.
Lost Boys multiply.
Yeah, into like
It
an
does
army.
seem like there's
So
700 of them.
yeah, right.
It keeps cutting to more of them swinging into the ship. Where do all these people come from?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like at least 30 of them swing onto the ship. Then it cuts away to them sailing an additional ship, and then all the face actor Lost Boys are manning it. I'm like, then who are the other ones?
Yeah.
And then
It's
Rufio
weird.
gets stabbed, and we never talk about him again.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. I don't remember him dying. I really don't.
I knew that he died, and I was just like, I thought it was a bigger moment.
Yeah.
Because like he dies, and then Peter Pan's just like, you killed Rufio, and then we will never speak of him again.
Yeah.
It's like if you're like he's important
He
enough.
served his purpose.
He's important enough of a character that if he's gonna die, we kind of gotta say something about it.
Yeah.
At minimum, like they just leave him on the ship, and then Peter Pan flies home, and he's like, "Lost Boys, do good."
Did you guys pick up on the fact that when Robin saves his daughter, that there are other kids in the cabin with her that aren't dressed like Lost Boys,
Yeah,
insinuating the fact that they
Captain Hook is kidnapping other
They've
kids.
kidnapped multiple children, which can only imply that they have been hunting for Pan for some time, but have missed the wrong Pan and kidnapped the wrong kids, and just have these kids on their ship
Well, the thing
forever.
that
That's a sequel to this movie. I want to watch.
I think
Wow.
we're near to wrapping up. The last thing I'll say about the ending is, like, that movie spends a lot of time building up the idea that Wendy has run a very successful orphanage for most of her life,
Yeah.
and at the end, like, there's so much kind of shoe leather laid for that, and you expect that at the end Peter's gonna bring the Lost Boys back to reality, and that's like what that's building to, and then he just leaves them there. which feels off to me. And like I get, it's not like a major issue. It's just like it's a small point. It's a small thing where it's just like if the idea is like you gotta grow up, but you can find your childhood wonderment, just like
bring him back,
and like we put him in the orphanage that Wendy has helped so many people.
Because I mean, like you guys have heard
for Toodles apparently.
Well, you guys have heard the theory that like Peter Pan is like the angel of death. Have you guys heard this theory?
What?
Oh yeah, it's like a take on the Peter Pan book and written by some other like fan fiction author that like Peter Pan is actually like sort of like a siren-esque like angel of death luring kids out of their window, and that they're not actually flying to Neverland.
That's like reading the original Pinocchio where Jiminy Cricket gets stomped upon halfway through.
Oh, what?
The Pinocchio book. He murders Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah.
He just steps on him.
Oh. Just kills his conscience. But yeah.
It has similar energy to...
But that's the thing. It's like the Lost Boys are like souls that Pan has
Or like the original Little Mermaid where she becomes sea foam and dies.
Yeah. Well, is this tying into tuberculosis?
I think so, actually.
Is Peter Pan the ghost of tuberculosis that was killing everybody?
Yeah.
When was the stage play originally written? Like in the 20s?
I'll look it up.
1904.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah. That's huge tuberculosis time.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Guys, it's
there you
tuberculosis.
This Spielberg's in his dark period. Hook 2.
TB. Dutch, I got TB.
But no, yeah, like I mean, we summarize the ending where they come home and they have this whole big celebration, and he says, "I want you to never ever close this window ever again." And they have this great. He throws his phone out the window, and
the daughter is there.
Mom is
fine.
there.
Nothing has changed.
I would say like the actress that plays Maura doesn't get a lot of stuff to do in this movie. Great performance when she sees her kids. Because she's like, I keep seeing them in their beds when I'm sleeping, to the point where I'm even seeing them when I'm awake.
Yeah.
And then they get up and they're like, "Mommy," and it's like, "Oh my God." And that was scene number 4 that made Stuart cry. So
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. 4 times I cried in this movie. But yeah, I feel like we can bash this movie to death, but I feel like I've said my piece.
I would still watch this over and over again.
Yeah, like I
would watch it
5
again.
out of 10.
It's a 5 out of 10, but it's a very watchable 5 out of 10.
That is.
I'll give it a 6 out of 10.
We've watched some really bad 5s out of 10, 5 out of 10s, and
it's a very
to put
watchable
this
5
on
out of
that
10.
level is
It is a little brutal.
Kind of a little disrespectful in my opinion. I mean, like, listen, Stuart rating 9 out of 10. If I want to give credence to folks' opinions and understandable facts about the missteps of the movie, 8 out of 10. But my personal rating is it's a 9 out of 10. I love this movie,
and I'm very happy for you.
I think it's one of Spielberg's. I still hold it. I think it's one of Spielberg's best movies. It's like his hidden gem that just give it 5, give it 10 years. People are going to talk about this movie. And people already are talking about this movie in a new light, being like...
Many people are talking about this movie.
Many people are talking about
every
it.
day.
More and more every day. More followers.
More people are talking about Hook. They're saying, please, Mr. Hook, come back.
But I do think the cult like following that this movie has been getting is growing and growing every single day, every year. And it has already been reimagined by a lot of people that started off as critics, and they're now huge fans of the movie.
I'm going to make Hook 2.
Okay.
It's about his son is now a shitty dad and Hook goes back again.
Oh my God. No, it should be Jack.
That's what I'm saying is Jack.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Movie
Becca.
comes out.
Oh, sorry. No, we do have to talk about the post-text.
I want to quickly do the post-text.
Yeah.
Movie comes out December 11th, 1991, a date that will live in infamy.
Whoa.
December 7th, 1941.
Sorry. I was
a date
like,
that will live in.
damn.
It was like a play on that. It comes out, receives very mixed reviews. The performances, as well as John Williams, get most of the praise, but a lot of people are very critical of the film itself. Roger Ebert, Chicago Sun-Times, says, the sad thing about the screenplay for Hook is it's so correctly titled. This whole construction is really nothing more than a hook on which to hang a new version of Peter Pan. No effort is made to involve Peter's magic in the changed world he now inhabits, and little thought has been given to Captain Hook's extraordinary persistence in wanting to revisit the events of the past. The failure in Hook is its inability to reimagine the material to find something new, fresh, or urgent to do with the Peter Pan myth. Lacking that, Spielberg should simply have remade the original story straight for his generation. Roger Ebert, one of the great writers. It's like kind of crazy that
he puts it all there.
I will not stand for doesn't try anything new. That is such bullshit.
Yeah, that's a little rough. That's
like
a little rough.
You can criticize this movie for not being able to combine the connective tissue that makes a final point land, and I will hear that out, and that's totally valid. But to try to make the claim that they're not trying to do something new with the Peter Pan story and experiment with it is such horseshit.
Yeah, that's
that's just
unfair.
like critiquing for critique's sake, and it's not an honest view of the movie. Sorry, I'm just a little peeved by.
I kind of agree with what he's saying. Though, where it's like it's an attempt to retell the story in a new way that doesn't change enough that it just kind of plays like it's just Peter Pan.
To say it's not though is just factually incorrect. That they try that to say like it doesn't do enough new things with the story. It's like it is a sequel. It is a sequel to Peter Pan. It is a new thing altogether.
To Peter, to Pan.
What can I? Do you have anything more to say post text?
It comes out. It makes $300 million, which is a very respectable number off a 70 budget. However, it still becomes it fails to meet like the expectations that the studio had for it,
especially when you consider the 40%.
Yeah, instead of the 40% that they're taking out of the gross, means the studio doesn't get much out of this, which is why this movie it becomes a very successful home video release.
Yeah,
I was one of them. Owning a 4K of it.
Yeah.
It gets 5 Oscar nominations for art direction, costume design, makeup, original song, and visual effects. All deserved.
That was going to kind of lead into my final thoughts of this movie that I wanted to kind of share is as much as we've been talking about and critiquing like the story, the screenplay, performances, direction, all those things. I think one undisputable fact that we can all love and appreciate about this movie is the craft that went into making this movie is superb.
It's not a forgettable movie.
It is.
It's not
beautiful in so many ways. In the way of like Jeff just said, art direction, costume, makeup, best original song, best visual effects. I don't know what else got nominated in '92 for best score, but the fact that this didn't get a score nomination is kind of crazy. I would even argue best cinematography. I think this movie is very well shot, especially when you consider like all the flying sequences and the fight choreography. Like
getting Tinkerbell in there, I'm sure was a huge challenge.
This movie shot by Dean Cundey, one of the all-time greats, until he lost his sauce in 2015.
And just
I don't know what happened.
to cap it all off, like I think for anything you can say about this movie, you cannot say this is a movie not made well. Like
Spielberg hires Dean Cundey to shoot this movie because
all movies are made.
Roger Rabbit.
All movies are made with a committee of craftspeople.
Yeah.
And the one thing that like Spielberg even wrote a letter. I actually wanted to pull it out to Robin regarding the press of this movie that I wanted to read. So this is an excerpt from the David Itzkoff book. By the end of the summer of 91, Robin had finished work on both Aladdin and Hook. And as a parting gift to Spielberg, he gave the director a painting of Peter Pan by the artist Greg Hildebrandt and a book of his illustrations. And Spielberg returned the gesture with a grateful farewell letter. Your work in Hook is flogging brilliant. The director wrote, there is a consistency of character development from the bookish and selfish Peter Banning to the explosively optimistic and liberated Peter Pan that can only be described as one watches the movie. I don't think I've ever met in my life any actor, producer, or other director who is as dedicated, as involved, as passionate, and as hardworking as you have been on Hook. It has been an honor working with you. Moscow on the Hudson was no fluke. You have done nothing but grow and explode out of that comic canister into one of the best actors in America today. Letter from Steven Spielberg to Robin Williams.
That's sweet.
And that's
just the best ever done.
Yeah, like from the actors
Class
to the set direction, to the makeup, to the music, to the cinematography, to the lighting, to everybody who worked on this movie, like great job.
Yeah.
Full package.
Yeah. So those are my final thoughts. Becca, do you have any final thoughts before I take us out?
I am sorry again that I had to reverse my opinion on this, but I could it in good faith.
Pennsylvania went red. It's okay. It's okay.
I just couldn't in good faith, just on the basis that we thought it was going to be fun to just like fight Jeff on this. for this episode that we had been talking about for many months.
Let me add him.
Yeah.
Scrappy dude looking ass.
I just couldn't in good conscience let go of the obvious problems with this movie because I think it deserves conversation in the fact that I don't want to just pass this off as a movie that just didn't work. There's ways that it can work, and I think it's just too bad.
I think, and I'm not saying this is a movie for me, but we have talked about movies where there are movies that are bad and they're just bad. Like there's nothing, they were bad from the start, they were bad throughout the making, and they were bad in the post process. And then there are movies that we come across and talk about that are even more frustrating than those bad movies. And those are movies that like could have worked.
Yeah.
That if you just tweaked one thing in the script or in a performance or in a note of direction, like it could change the whole tune and vibe of the movie and make it speak at a greater, deeper level for a lot of people. I don't think that's this movie, but I understand where people watch this and have those same views where it's like this movie had so many great things to offer. And if it had just made some tweaks and small decisions, like it really could have made this sing for a wider critical audience.
Yeah.
And it sings for me and it doesn't sing for other people, and that's okay. That's why movies is the great, amazing art form.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can't end any better on that note. So if you like this episode, please remember to rate, review, comment, like, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments how wrong you think I am or how wrong you think Jeff is, or
hit us up.
Hit us up and let us know what your thoughts are. Remember, you can listen to us on a multitude of platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts doesn't exist, but we are on YouTube, and we're on a whole different other series of platforms that if I mention, we'll go for another 2 hours. As always, special thanks to Michael Van Bodingen-Smith for the theme music. And always special thanks to Rebecca for the work that she does on our podcast. We always appreciate you. And thank you for coming on our show to talk to us again after a 1.5 year hiatus.
Yeah.
Let's get you back on.
Years.
Yeah. Let's get you back on a little bit sooner than that. Thank you all so much. Join us next week for A Wish for Wings That Work.
An episode we definitely didn't accidentally record a long time ago.
We'll talk about it later. Bye.